In the morning, when the alarm clock rang, he woke up in a daze. At this moment, his eyes were vacant, pupils slightly dilated, but then his pupils suddenly contracted, reflecting in blood-red color. The man, who was still blurry now, woke up completely, and he got up from bed. Fang Hou looked up at the ceiling, seeing thick blood-red writing on it, looking very bizarre. He felt extremely surprised and confused, his face covered in sweat, mixed with a hint of anger. "What's happening? Who wrote on the ceiling of my house?" At that moment, the bright blood-red writing gradually disappeared. He couldn't believe his eyes and rubbed them hard. Was he dreaming? The writing just now was too clear and real. But just waking up, Fang Hou didn't think much as he got out of bed, unconsciously looking around. Suddenly, his whole body stiffened as if struck by lightning. He couldn't believe his eyes as he looked at the unfamiliar room in front of him, trying to find something familiar. But everything was strange to him. Where am I? Why am I sleeping here? What is happening? Last night, I didn't drink alcohol or go to the wrong door. I clearly remember coming home, eating a bowl of instant noodles, watching a movie, and then going to sleep. But now the noodles are on the bedside table, and the tissues used last night are all gone. At the same time, a series of chaotic and unfamiliar memories rushed into his head. They were all orphans of the same age, with similar appearances, but their lives were completely different. At this moment, he was extremely confused and didn't understand what was happening. Even if I really did travel through time, what were those blood-red words just now? He tried to search his memory, but couldn't find any relevant information, which made Fang Hou feel extremely uneasy. The strange blood-red words that he had just seen did not exist in the memories of the previous owner. Could it be that what he had just seen was the truth? At that moment, a gentle voice of a woman echoed, "Honey, wake up for breakfast." She leaned lazily against the door, wearing a two-strap silk nightgown, her figure extremely alluring. She quickly ran to Fang Hou, who stood motionless. Could it be that Fang Hou was already married in this parallel world? The woman was now sitting on the edge of the bed, looking gently at Fang Hou. "Darling, you're awake. Time for breakfast." Fang Hou looked at the food in front of him, suddenly feeling like he couldn't have been transported to a better place. He swallowed his saliva. If he hadn't been transported, how could he have such a beautiful and gentle wife? The woman, seeing that Fang Hou still didn't react, with a gentle face, softly spoke, "Husband, wake up, it's time for breakfast." Fang Hou hurried to respond because when communicating with others, not reacting within 2 seconds would be very rude. But now, he didn't know what to call her, wife, dear wife, or darling. Then his face turned red. Or should I call her a good little girl? After struggling with his thoughts for a while, he finally decided on the most appropriate name for her. Maybe the memories of the previous owner were still in his brain. Immediately, he cleared his throat, clasped his fingers together, closed his eyes, and began to search, trying to remember the memories of this wife. However, a horrifying thing happened. There was no wife's name, no dating process, no hobbies, no figure posture, nothing, not even a person like that in his memory. At this point, Fang Hou immediately collapsed, feeling the blood in his body freezing. His heart also skipped a beat. At this moment, Fang Hou slightly bowed his head, not daring to look at her, fear evident on his face. "So, what is this woman who claims to be my wife?" The woman stood still, with a big, gentle smile on her face, gazing at him. More than 2.5 seconds had passed, and the woman's smile remained unchanged, as if it were a finely carved white porcelain statue on the face of a beautiful person. For some reason, Fang Hou no longer felt as gentle as before, but rather shivered, and the warmth from earlier started to feel cold. After some thinking, Fang Hou looked at her and spoke with difficulty. "Who are you?" As soon as he finished speaking, the smile on the woman's face suddenly changed. An extreme surprise appeared in her eyes. The gentle smile suddenly turned tense. Her once smooth and white skin now cracked with numerous black fissures all over her body, and in an instant, she emitted sounds of ecstatic pleasure. "You see me." Immediately, Fang Hou felt like he had fallen into an icy pit. Cold sweat broke out on his face. His mind was in turmoil. "I'm sorry, my mind is a bit confused. Let me think again." But the woman did not give him a chance. She opened her mouth wide towards Fang Hou, emitting a growling sound not of a human. "Ha ha, you see me." Fang Hou's fear rose like a tide. Tears immediately poured out. His body stiffened in place, and then, as promised, the shadow of death arrived, a wide mouth directly engulfing Fang Hou's head, and he was eaten alive on the spot by the woman. Then unimaginable pain spread throughout his body. He had died many times, and each time he died in a different way. But after death, he would always return to the starting point. However, the next moment, the space around him began to shatter like a broken glass. Everything returned to nothingness. He felt himself horrified, screaming, breathing heavily, and once again woke up on the bed. This time he was covered in sweat, with a horrified look on his face. What just happened? Just now, was he not supposed to have died, or was he dreaming? But right now, he once again noticed the ceiling, on which appeared the blood-soaked words he had just seen. "Don't let them know. You can see." These words were like a wake-up call, also making him realize that just now was not a dream, and these blood-soaked lines under his gaze suddenly slowly disappeared. At this moment, he could not believe it. He couldn't understand it even after thinking about it 100 times. Is this sentence reminding me, telling me to pretend to be asleep? But then he thought, no, the previous owner of this body is not blind. He is just a normal person. Furthermore, in his memory, he never had a wife. He always lived alone, never heard or saw anything unusual. So the meaning of the previous sentence must be to not let his wife know that he can see her, to pretend that he is alone in the house and completely ignore the existence of his wife. Just then, a gentle voice echoed from outside the bedroom, still those words, those phrases. "Darling, wake up, it's time for breakfast." The voice was so gentle, so loving, yet to Fang Hou, it only brought fear. He tried to suppress the fear, constantly thinking in his heart, maybe if I just ignore her like the previous owner of this body, choose to live a normal life, then I won't be killed. Therefore, he tried to suppress the fear in his heart, bowed his head, and pretended not to look at his wife as the bloody words instructed. But unexpectedly, his wife did not follow the usual conventions. She sat directly down and stared at Fang Hou. In an instant, their eyes met, and the atmosphere seemed to freeze. At this moment, Fang Hou appeared calm on the outside, but turmoil raged within him. He tightly grasped the bed rail, trying to remain calm and continuously reminding himself not to move, not to look. But at this moment, his wife used a trick again, directly turning her head 180 degrees. Seeing this, Fang Hou gritted his teeth, cold sweat pouring down. Damn, how is this possible? Before he could react, his wife extended her 40-meter long tongue and continuously licked his face. This action also immediately made Fang Hou lose his composure, and his ex-wife also noticed that, "You see me." In the next moment, blood splattered and Fang Hou once again died. Not long after, Fang Hou breathed heavily again, waking up from the horror. At this point, he clenched his fist tightly, clenching his jaw. Damn it, damn it. After that, he trembled, holding his head, not knowing what to do. What finally happened? Is this a cycle of death? Or like in a movie where it's an endless loop? No matter how many times you die, you will eventually return to the starting point, like saving files in a single-player game. After a moment of thought, Fang Hou tried to calm himself down, and his brain quickly started working. Just now, he had bowed his head without looking at her. She took the initiative to move closer, which confirmed that she had to make sure that he could only see her when he acted. So he picked up his phone, intending to redirect attention by watching a short video, and at the same time, his wife appeared behind him. "Honey, wake up and have breakfast." Fang Hou's back was already soaked with sweat. Suddenly, his wife slightly bent down and looked at her phone, saying, "Oh, husband, how could you look at other women in front of me? Do you no longer like me?" However, in Fang Hou's heart, he cursed, like that monkey. He tried to overcome the fear in his heart and continued to watch the video insensitively. This time he had experience from before, so intentionally brought the phone closer to his face, almost sticking to it. Suddenly, his wife whispered in his ear, "Honey, you don't have nearsightedness, so why do you have the phone so close? Can't you see me?" Hearing this, Fang Hou was startled and cold sweat ran down his face. Doesn't even doing something out of the ordinary work? But seeing that this time his wife didn't directly confront him, he sighed in relief. Afterwards, he tried once again to calm himself down and then scrolled to the next video, but this time, his vision suddenly froze. It turned out that the young girl in the video was his wife. Seeing this, Fang Hou was both amazed and angry. Damn it. Immediately, he jumped up from the bed and threw the phone away. But at this moment, his wife walked closer. Her face was grotesque, cracked skin, and her mouth kept repeating a phrase, "You see me." After saying that, she screamed loudly with blood dripping from her mouth towards Fang Hou. But this time, Fang Hou didn't just sit and wait to die. He roared, "I see that monkey." At the same time, he tightly clenched his fist and punched towards her. But his wife didn't flinch. She dodged to the side. Immediately afterwards, she screamed loudly with blood streaming from her mouth, savagely biting off his arm. In an instant, the whole room was filled with desperate screams. At this point, his wife used her tongue to wrap around his arm, her face showing a satisfied expression. At this point, Fang Hou seems to have accepted this outcome, with no longer a fearful look on his face, but rather a calm expression. "So this time, I'm going to be eaten, huh? Well, let's see what happens next." Fang Hou has been resurrected 6 times, but still gets surprised and frightened by his wife's sudden attack, and then he gets eaten. Each time, he dies due to poor acting and inability to control his instinctive reactions. After waking up again, he loses all reason, with the horrific scene of his previous death still vivid in his eyes. At this point, he seems to go insane, sticking his head out of the iron bars with a terrified look on his face, shouting, "Damn it, help me, let me out." But his beautiful wife just smiles and steps out. Do you see me? It can be guessed that he will be eaten. After dying 8 times, during which he always wanted to escape, but couldn't, he decides to break the flower vase, for there is no escape, so he chooses to enjoy it. In the countless times of death and resurrection, he also simultaneously received the memories of the owner of this body and understood what kind of world this was. The only difference from the previous life was that this world was clearly more strange and bizarre. After Fang Hou died 18 times, everything around him became unusually quiet. Immediately, he began to think, why can I die and come back to life countless times? Who wrote the blood-red words on the ceiling? Why do the blood-red words disappear after I see them? What are they? Are they all demons? Are they responsible for everything? It seems like my wife is one of them. She is a demon. Thinking this, Fang Hou made a decision. As long as I am alive, my wife must die. At this moment, his wife walked towards the bedroom, her familiar voice echoing. This time, Fang Hou was not hesitant at all. After dying 18 times, he was very clear now that what was called breakfast was not meant for him to eat, but to turn him into breakfast. Suddenly, he discovered something. Every time his wife woke Fang Hou up, she never made physical contact with him. Could it be that she couldn't make physical contact until he confirmed that he could see her? Thinking this, Fang Hou decided to try it once. Immediately, he got up and walked in front of his wife. Seeing this, his wife looked at him gently. Do you want to have breakfast first or me first? So, darling, you can see me, can't you? After speaking, she blushed and waited for Fang Hou's reaction. While Fang Hou experimented with his thoughts just now, he resolutely passed through her body. At this moment, he rejoiced in his heart. Indeed, she can only take action when it's confirmed that I can see her. As for Fang Hou, who was too busy to eat, he went straight to the kitchen and fried eggs. Seeing this, his wife was angry. Darling, I've finished preparing breakfast for you. Hurry up and come to eat. Fang Hou, feeling embarrassed and unexpressive, sighed. Indeed, the more beautiful a woman is, the better she is at deceiving people. She explicitly told me to have breakfast, but in reality, she didn't do it at all. Very quickly, he finished making a sandwich and Fang Hou was about to finish his breakfast and leave. He was going outside to look for clues about his wife, to search for anomalies in this world. At that moment, his wife suddenly appeared on the table. She laughed and looked at Fang Hou. Honey, why aren't you eating the breakfast I made for you? Do you not like my cooking skills? This time, Fang Hou was not scared by her sudden appearance, and he continued to eat. After finishing breakfast, Fang Hou went straight to the door of the room. He had to leave. Only by leaving could he have the opportunity for revenge. But as soon as he reached for the doorknob, his beautiful wife's face appeared with a sad look in her eyes. Honey, don't go out. You stay at home with me? Before he could say anything, he heard a click, and the door handle turned. Fang Hou calmly walked out of the room, and then closed the door firmly. At this moment, the flames of hatred in him are burning fiercely. No one can kill me 18 times and still evade the law. It's the hatred towards his wife, the overwhelming hatred of being killed 18 times. After thinking, he decisively walked down the stairs, but then he suddenly found the surroundings eerily quiet. No one in sight, even during the day. But at this moment, he didn't think much. In his mind, he only thought about one thing, that is revenge. He had to find a way to kill the demon and then come back to kill her. Quickly, he passed through the dark, dilapidated staircase, and a green door appeared in front of Fang Hou. He slowly pushed the door open. The sunlight hadn't shone through for a long time. Then he stepped outside, diving into the sunny world outside. But suddenly, Fang Hou's whole body stiffened, his blood almost congealing. At this moment, his entire body was enveloped in sunlight, but he no longer felt any warmth. He looked at the outside world with lifeless eyes, muttering to himself, "Is this hell?" Everywhere on the streets and in the sky were grotesque and terrifying creatures, densely packed and rampant. The scene before him was extremely bizarre and frightening, but it was not enough to crush his spirit. On the contrary, it made him burst into laughter. His laughter twisted and bitter, sending chills down people's spines. At this moment, he found this strange world somehow fascinating. At the same time, he realized that his laughter could attract the attention of demonics, so he quickly covered his mouth with his hand. But the twisted laughter couldn't be suppressed, constantly escaping from between his fingers, a resentful laughter, causing him to cough uncontrollably to the point of vomiting. Right after that, he leaned against the pole, continuously vomiting. At the same time, a child's voice rang out, "Mister, are you okay? Are you sick?" This sudden appearance of the little girl caused Fang Hou's pupils to suddenly dilate. She only saw the girl tying 2 pigtails, looking about 40 years old, still with a lollipop in her mouth. Seeing that, he tried to control his smile, trying to make himself look more gentle. "It's okay, little sister. You could call me Big Brother. After saying that, he couldn't help but reach out and stroke the little girl's head. "You're so cute. If only I had a cute daughter like you, that would be great." However, the next second, the cute face of the little girl suddenly turned fierce, sharp, and said a familiar phrase, "You see me." Fang Hou was stunned in place, then he slightly raised his head to look at the girl in front of him, only to see her now becoming immensely large, the lollipop in her hand turning into a bone-white staff. She went crazy screaming, "Look at me." But this time Fang Hou was not afraid, but instead laughed loudly without stopping. "Ha ha ha ha, interesting, really interesting." Then Fang Hou wiped away tears from laughing, then pointed to the girl in front of him. "Compared to before, I like your current look better, because that way when I kill you, I won't have to worry about anything." At the same time, the girl went crazy screaming, at the same time raised the stick in her hand, and the next moment, the darkness of the stick engulfed Fang Hou completely. But Fang Hou still laughed. "How strange, like you. It turns out there are so many. No need to worry that I will kill them all. This is really exciting. Everyone will die." Before the words were finished, a thunderous boom. Fang Hou was directly smashed into pieces. Very quickly, Fang Hou woke up again from sleep. This time, the madness on his face had disappeared, replaced by a calmness like a calm surface of water. This is a beautiful and familiar wife, but strangely, once again came to the bed, woke him up for breakfast, and he repeated his previous actions, then left the house. Only now did he come to sit in a park outside somewhere. Not long after, the cute little girl appeared before him again, the only difference this time being that the girl was not chewing gum, but with a sad, tearful face, she said, "Uncle, I can't find my mommy anymore. Can you take me home?" At this point, Fang Hou didn't answer, but observed his surroundings. Immersed in thought, he realized that this world seemed to be filled with all kinds of demonic, which was divided into two types. One type looked bizarre and irrational. Although it was aggressive, it was like air, unable to affect objects. Another type looked no different from humans. They were next to the target, pretending to be friends or family, talking to the target, and would act when they received a response. Like his beloved wife, but even ordinary people basically do not recognize their existence, but still cling to someone to play the role. After all, why? Thinking about this, Fang Hou was very suspicious. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed in Fang Hou's head. A chilling thought rushed in. Are the demonic creatures trying to integrate into human life? Thinking about this, he couldn't help but feel dry mouth, so he rode his bike to the store to buy a drink. But after paying, when looking at his phone, he found that he only had a 3-digit amount of money left. Immediately, he felt that he had to quickly find out the truth about this world and then find a way to make money. Right at this moment, there was a faint sound, the sound of a message bell ringing. It turned out that his boss was mentioning him in the work group. "Fang Hou, it's already afternoon. Why haven't you gone to work yet? You've been late several times this month. You still want a reward." Seeing this, Fang Hou suddenly remembered that 6 months ago, the previous owner had sold a villa, and until now, the commission had not been paid. If he could get this commission back, he could hold on for a while. Immediately, he typed on the screen only to see himself composing a message resignation, and at the same time saying that he would go to the sales department to demand the commission. After speaking, he rode his bike to the sales department. Not long after, he stopped at his destination, but just a quick glance made him dizzy. Looking at the gloomy building in front of him, his pupils suddenly contracted, cold sweat dripping. Where is this? Where is the sales department? Immediately, he got off his bike and went straight in, only to see a sign hanging on a pole clearly written with 6 large characters. Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital. At this moment, Fang Hou's phone suddenly rang, only to hear a worried and caring voice from the other end. "Fang Hou, why did you just answer the phone? Is everything okay?" Fang Hou told the person on the other end that there was nothing wrong, and then asked, "Are you at the company right now?" As soon as he finished speaking, the person on the other end immediately spoke in an angry tone. "Yes, Wu Nahai has called you several times, and you didn't answer. Now he's taking it out on me and making me work overtime." Fang Hou said, "I'll come there right away. We'll talk more later." After hanging up the phone, Fang Hou looked at the psychiatric hospital in front of him and sank into thought. Clearly, the whole building has turned into a gloomy psychiatric hospital, but according to my colleague, working inside hasn't been affected at all. Could this hospital also be demonic? It's really interesting. At this point, he decided to go inside to investigate, and the only sound around was the footsteps of Fang Hou. However, the next moment, Fang Hou looked puzzled, let out a painful groan, as if he had hit something. He couldn't believe looking at his hands. Could it be that this psychiatric hospital can't be entered or what? But Fang Hou didn't believe in bad luck, immediately reached out his hands again, and then a loud sound followed after. A soft and elastic feeling rushed intensely. Looking closely, 2 round and plump steamed buns, soft and tender, struck his eyes. In a blink of an eye, Fang Hou was extremely shocked, his face slightly red. Then a large heavy arm struck him in the face, Only at this moment, the woman hugged her chest and cursed, "You rotten scoundrel, I'll sue you." At this time, Fang Hou hugged his swollen red face with a bewildered look, and at this time, the security guard at the security checkpoint heard the noise and asked, "Why is it so noisy?" At the same time, pay attention to Fang Hou next to him. "Oh, isn't it Fang Hou? What are you doing here?" At this point, the woman ran up to the front of the guard and began to explain what had just happened in a frantic manner. At this point, Fang Hou didn't pay attention but unconsciously turned its head towards the hospital, only to find that the psychiatric hospital had disappeared and was replaced by the luxurious Liu Academy. Seeing this, Fang Hou was stunned on the spot and then unconsciously blinked. When he opened his eyes again, the psychiatric hospital appeared once again. He looked around, immersed in thought. What is happening? Is it a chaotic time? Overlapping space? Then he reached out to touch, and to his surprise, an unbelievable scene happened. His hand went straight through the wall. Seeing this, he made a judgment in his heart. I can see this psychiatric hospital, but I can't touch the entity. It's like the demonic Kia. I have to receive feedback in order to act. As for the strange hospital room in front of me, it seems that I can only come into contact with it when I meet a certain condition. So what is that condition? Thinking of this, Fang Hou decided to test it once. Then he reached out to the wall, and without hesitation, he ran straight into the wall of the hospital room. At this moment, it felt like he was entering thin air. He went straight inside, only to see the gray walls resembling an abyss. The walls and floor were covered in long-dried blood. He looked at the horrifying scene before him and always felt that there must be a huge secret hidden here. Fang Hou's only thought at this moment was to uncover the secrets of the psychiatric hospital. He didn't walk the normal way, but went straight through the wall. He went through the lobby, dining hall, bathrooms, activity rooms, and all these places were empty. Until he reached a hospital room, he couldn't help but stop. This hospital room looked very special. The main door was dark red, and only in the hospital ward did he smell the strong scent of fresh blood. The room had a very prominent line of text, 104. At this point, Fang Hou had the intention to investigate further. He walked to the front of the hospital room, put his hand in, and without hesitation, he firmly walked through the hospital room door. In the blink of an eye, he was inside the hospital room. A girl in a patient's gown was lying on the bed, shivering and crying. At that moment, Fang Hou looked intently, as if he didn't see the girl. Suddenly, the girl seemed to recognize Fang Hou, then slowly stood up. In the next moment, she abruptly turned around and stared at Fang Hou, her eyes empty, without pupils, even one might say without senses. Her mouth emitted a chilling sound, "Brother, come and play with me." But Fang Hou paid no attention to her and walked straight ahead. The girl stood there blankly. After Fang Hou passed through room 104, just as he walked through the wall, a red-eyed, four-eyed ghost suddenly appeared in front of him. But he was not afraid of this sudden appearance and did not stop, continuing to walk forward. At this point, he showed no emotion at all. The four-eyed ghost looked at Fang Hou with suspicion until he left this hospital room. He continued to explore the hospital wards here, and Fang Hou counted at least a dozen wards like this. Moreover, some wards were wide open, and there was even the possibility of a demonic escape. Although he encountered terrifying ghosts approaching him as he passed through these wards, Fang Hou was able to face them calmly now, all thanks to his wife's 18 consecutive kills. Now he arrived at a doctor's examination room, where there were some medical records and files on the floor. Seeing this, Fang Hou secretly rejoiced. With these documents, I can get some useful information. At that moment, he suddenly saw a medical record, clearly stating experiment no, 128 transforming into demonic. Seeing this, Fang Hou's pupils suddenly contracted. Could it be that demonic are all transformed by humans? Could it be that those demons in the other wards used to be human? After thinking about it, an indescribable shock arose in Fang Hou's heart. Soon after, he sat down to continue reading, but this space was all illusion. He couldn't touch anything, let alone flip through the medical reports. Suddenly, in front of Fang Hou, a few thin strands of hair appeared. These strands were hanging down from above, not connected to anything, but he wouldn't be foolish to look up. Instead, standing up as if nothing had happened, only to see above him a female doctor in a white and blue coat with limbs resembling that of a spider, clinging to the ceiling, her pale face with two fierce red eyes staring at Fang Hou. "You have arrived. Do you want to explore the mystery of life with me?" Fang Hou paid no attention to her, but thought to himself, there must be clues in the doctor's office, so there must be in other places as well. And the answer to all the questions must lie in the center of this psychiatric hospital, that is, the office of the head of the hospital. After thinking, Fang Hou went to find the head of the hospital's office. He quickly identified an office area. Furthermore, this office area coincided with the sales building, but this was not the director's office. Right after that, he went to the second floor, which was where the former owner worked. At that moment, there was a sudden call. "Fang Hou, Why are you only just arriving now? Wu Dahai is about to go crazy. Don't go looking for him so hastily. Before finishing the sentence, Wu Dahai angrily came out, pointing at Fang Hou, who had just arrived on the floor. Are you still daring to come to work? I already fired you. Do you know that? But at this moment, Fang Hou did not show any emotion. Instead, he pushed the two of them away, walking through the middle of them. Seeing this, Zhao looked at Fang Hou with suspicion, while Wu Dahai was both shocked and angry, pointing at Zhao. You little punk, how dare you push me? Are you trying to start a rebellion? What do you intend to do? Who let you go to the third floor? Stand still for me. I already fired you. Get out right now. Don't go upstairs. However, Fang Hou paid no attention to anything and quickly went up to the third floor. His eyes immediately focused on a door not far away, and he silently rejoiced in his heart. Finally found it. Only the words Office of the Institute Director were written on the door. Wu Dahai followed closely behind, breathing heavily. Fang Hao's eyes were fixed on the door, and he quickly stepped forward. In the real world, this was the office of the company's president. As he turned the key to open the door, all three of them stood still, with Wu Dahai's face turning pale. It's over, we're done for this time. In the room, they saw a pair of long legs in black stockings and a seductive figure. A woman wearing a business dress appeared in sight. Hearing the noise, the two quickly stopped their shameful actions. The man pulled up his pants and cursed, while the woman blushed and covered her chest. At this moment, Fang Hou stared at the woman, or more specifically at the desk in the office. Suddenly, Fang Hou stepped forward, heading straight towards them. Then he grabbed the woman's hand and with force pulled her down from the table, only to see Fang Hou lying on the table, staring at a piece of parchment. As soon as he glanced at it, he became extremely excited. Then he quietly expressed his joy. Indeed, this psychiatric hospital hides a shocking secret. There was only a line of words on it. The one destined by the heavens wants to know the truth of this world, wants to know what demonic truly is. If you want to know all the answers, come to room C520. Everything you want to know is there. Fang Hou quickly read through the entire content, feeling weighed down. The person who signed at the end is Zhu Qingfeng, must be the director of the Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital. So who is this letter written for? Could it be that he already knew I would come? At this moment, Fang Hou turned and walked out. While walking, Fang Hou was thinking to himself, the unresolved old doubts are now joined by new ones. Room C520, perhaps all the answers truly lie there. At that moment, the brightly lit hallway suddenly turned pitch black. Fang Hou took out his phone to use as a flashlight, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was not right. It wasn't just a power outage at this particular location and time. With this in mind, he quickly shone the phone's flashlight towards the second floor, only to find that the Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital had disappeared without a trace. He immediately ran up to the second floor, wanting to see if there was any sign of the psychiatric hospital elsewhere. The man behind him was extremely angry, demanding Wu Dahai to hand over his phone. But Wu Dahai hesitantly said, "No signal, I can't make a call right now." At that moment, the confident man spoke up, "With my position, I can access more than you can imagine. When it comes to the secrets of this world, the phone signal being blocked and the light being obscured. If I am not mistaken, all these signs indicate that we may have entered the demon world." Hearing this, Fang Hou let out a chilling smile. Ha ha, demon world, ha. On the other side, the sales staff in the building were also very worried. The report just finished, and then the power went out right before it could be saved. At that moment, Wu Dahai's voice rang out, "Stop complaining here. Quickly send someone to check if there's a power outage." At the same time, the security guard, Uncle Zhao, went up to the next floor and saw the man from earlier. He quickly asked, "The building suddenly lost power. Is everyone okay? I'm going to check if there's a power outage." Upon hearing this, the man looked annoyed. "I'm fine. I'm just irritated at the thought of having to work overtime later." On another side, a female colleague turned on the flashlight on her phone, but suddenly noticed that the light was dimming. The colleague sitting next to her curiously asked, "Is there dust up there? Try wiping it." But she almost wiped through the phone and the light still didn't get brighter. Each of her colleagues took out their phones, turned on the flashlight, but the results were all the same. The light was very weak. At that moment, Fang Hou remembered the words of her superior, Wang Zitang, so she turned to ask him, "Earlier you mentioned Demon World, what is it?" Hearing this, a female colleague nearby became frightened to the point where her heart was pounding and her legs were shaking. Demon World? Are they talking about Demon World? Just as she finished speaking, a male colleague looked at the girl with disdain. "How could there be a demon world in this world? Don't scare yourself here." At this point, the colleagues began to whisper and gossip, while Wang Zitang looked gloomy. Suddenly, he looked at the noisy colleagues and shouted loudly, "Shut up, all of you." Then he looked at them seriously. "Now, everyone be silent. The words I'm about to say are very important, related to whether we can survive or not. As he finished speaking, all the colleagues looked horrified and the atmosphere became tense. At that moment, Wang Zitang took a deep breath. Simply put, this world has demonic. Demon world is the realm of demons. It can also be understood as a different dimension, and now this is the world of demons. We are on demon territory. Hearing this, everyone was so terrified that they stood frozen in place. After a moment, Wang's colleague now regained his composure. He suddenly asked the person next to him, "Where is Uncle Zhao? Has he returned?" He went to check the circuit breaker earlier, but he hasn't come back yet. Could it be that he encountered a real demon? This made Wang Zitang no longer hold on to his anger from earlier, but instead filled in with a fear like never before. Normal people in the demon world had to be careful with their words and actions to avoid violating the demon's laws of killing. Otherwise, it would be like seeking death. As soon as he finished speaking, Wu Nahai was so scared he didn't know what to do. He grabbed Wang Zitang and shakily asked, "So, Wang, what should we do now?" Wang Zitang looked at Wu Nahai with no hint of coldness in his expression and said, "Right now, our only option is to figure out a way to escape this damn demon world, or else everyone will be killed by the demons." At this moment, it was so quiet and frightening that you could hear the sound of your own heartbeat. It seemed like there was some kind of dark magic hidden here. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared, making Fang Hou break out in a cold sweat. He tilted his head to look to the side, recognizing this familiar feeling. It was definitely demonic. He calmly told everyone, "The demon has appeared again." His calm voice seemed to contain some kind of dark magic or information in his words, which shook everyone. Some were so scared that their skin crawled, and they looked at Fang Hou with both fear and anger, saying, "At a time like this, why are you saying nonsense? Where is the demon?" At that moment above them, a woman's long hair suddenly fell down. When she reacted, it was too late. Her mouth was tightly wrapped in the long hair, preventing her from making any sound. A moment later, her whole body was tightly bound. Meanwhile, Fang Hou stood there, looking calm and composed with a pale and motionless face that made him look like a living doll. Suddenly, Fang Hou slowly opened his mouth. "Wang Xiao Li, she's nowhere to be seen anymore." A colleague exclaimed in fear, "You're talking nonsense. Wang Xiao Li is clearly right next to me." After speaking, she turned to Wang Xiao Li. "Wang Xiao Li, say something." But then she realized that there was no one next to her, and at this point, everyone seemed to go crazy. Wang Xiao Li has truly disappeared. Could it be that the demonic has appeared for real? Seeing this, Wang Zitang suddenly turned to ask Fang Hou, "Can you see what the demon looks like?" Although the two often clashed in the face of imminent danger, everything became meaningless, and at this point, Fang Hou calmly replied, "Limited vision, can't see the ghost, only saw Wang Xiao Li disappear." At the same time, a man pointed to Fang Hou standing beside him and said, "Our colleague has just been taken by the demon. Why is he still so calm? He's not normal. He must have been possessed by the demon." Wang Zitang looked at Fang Hou with suspicion. "It seems like you're not afraid of demons at all. Could it be that you're a spiritual master?" Listening to this, Fang Hou shook his head and asked Wang Zitang in return, "What is a spiritual master?" This made Wang Zitang even more suspicious. Fang Hou can remain so calm when a demon appears, but doesn't know what a spiritual master is. What kind of person is he after all? He explained, "A spiritual master is someone who can control their own spiritual power. My cousin is a spiritual master, and the best way to break the current situation is for someone to become a spiritual master." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou gave a sinister smile. "In that case, how is a spiritual master trained in the demon world?" Suddenly, Wang Zitang was extremely surprised. In this situation, Fang Hou can still make such keen judgments. Perhaps he is truly the key to our escape. Right after that, he looked at Fang Hou seriously. "My cousin said that in order to become a spiritual master, one can only borrow the power of demonic, and also need to be two conditions at the same time. One is to experience extreme horror between the boundary of life and death, stimulating the fluctuation of the soul, and the other is to contact demonic, so that the power of demonic can penetrate the soul. But it should be noted that the power of demonic is like a bloody scab. While wiping away the dirt on the Ming Dynasty jade, it will also not avoid the risk of corrupting the soul. The so-called light of the soul is actually the light of the soul itself, the product of distortion." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou was slightly skeptical, contacting something strange between the boundary of life and death. He has fulfilled both of these conditions. Why hasn't his soul been enlightened? Or maybe it has been enlightened for a long time, but he just hasn't realized it yet. At this moment, he looked at his hands, immersed in thought. Is it because of the unexpected death after transmigration here that he did not really come into contact with demonic, meeting his wife and the demons in the psychiatric hospital? Just need not respond. They are just illusions of another dimension, fundamentally not considered contact. Currently, the demons hidden in the darkness can really invade from the virtual world into the real world. Even without activation conditions, they can still kill people. So just by contacting these demons more, he will have the ability to destroy them. Thinking about this, Fang Hou once again became crazy, unable to help but laugh coldly. At this moment, in his head, he only thought of one thing, which is to kill his wife for revenge. So Fang Hou made up his mind, must become a spiritual master. Also at this moment, Fang Hou suddenly noticed a disturbance. He turned back and continued to utter shocking information. Another person has gone missing. Hearing this, everyone was frightened to the point of jumping up. After that, they looked around and discovered that Jia Liang, who had been standing right beside them, had disappeared quietly. At this point, Wang Zitang was on the verge of collapsing. The continuous disappearance of people had caused the last remnants of his sanity to vanish. Immediately, he yelled at them, "Everyone shut up! Let me call Demon Emperor." Lai Fei, at this moment, cried and looked at him. "Wang, what should we do now? I don't want to disappear." Wang Zitang, furious, replied, "You're asking me. Who should I ask?" At this moment, Fang Hou calmly said 2 to 3 minutes. Wang Zitang and the others looked at him with fear in their eyes, only to see Fang Hou calmly analyzing the time interval between the disappearances is 2 to 3 minutes. More accurately, 2 minutes for women and 3 minutes for men. For the time Zhao Uncle disappeared, 3 minutes later, Wang Xiao Lai also disappeared, and 2 minutes after Wang Xiao Lai disappeared, it was Jia Liang's turn. So if my calculations are correct, 3 minutes after Jia Liang disappeared, someone else will disappear too. Hearing that, everyone was extremely shocked and didn't know what to do. Right after, Fang Hou calmly stepped into the darkness. Seeing this, his close friend Zhao Hao doubted. "Fang Hao, what are you going to do? You don't want to live anymore?" Hearing this, Fang Hao turned his head slightly and said, "Of course I'm going to find a way to survive. I can't just stand here and wait to die." Suddenly, Wang Zitang shouted at Fang Hao, "Damn it, stop for me. I told you, no one is allowed to act recklessly. Are you deaf?" However, Fang Hao didn't turn back, but continued to step into the darkness, and at the same time, he calmly said, "Currently, there are about 8 people still alive here. According to analysis, every 2 to 3 minutes, someone disappears. In about 20 more minutes, everyone will perish. It's better to take a chance and find a way to escape." Hearing this, Wang Zitang became furious. "You're just a normal person. How do you know the demon?" Before Wang Zitang could finish speaking, he suddenly felt scared. At this point, he couldn't say a word, only seeing Fang Hou with no expression on his face, looking like a lifeless corpse, but extremely convincing. Right after that, Fang Hou said, "If you say another word, I will kill you before the demons appear." Immediately, Fang Hou walked alone towards the darkness, and his close friend Zhao Hao followed him. They were walking in a dark corridor. At this point, Zhao Hao, walking behind Fang Hou, was covered in cold sweat, his face full of fear as he said, "Fang Hou, this is not okay. Why haven't we reached the stairs yet?" Hearing this, Fang Hou signaled for silence. Shout. At the same time, he stopped and stared into the depths of the corridor, only catching a glimpse of a faint light at the end of the corridor. Seeing this, Fang Hou couldn't help but furrow his brow. This light, it looks exactly like the light in King Shan's psychiatric hospital. In the blink of an eye, an unbelievable suspicion arose in his mind, and then he quickened his pace towards the light. When he completely stepped into the light, he realized that it was King Shan's psychiatric hospital. Everywhere was blood, everywhere was broken hospital equipment. At this moment, Zhao Hao, who was hiding behind him, trembled with fear, not daring to look straight ahead. "Fang Hou, are you hallucinating?" Tears kept falling. "Why does it look like a hospital from a horror movie here?" Hearing this, Fang Hou was extremely astonished. "You could also see the hospital." Then Fang Hou put his hand on the wall. Immediately, a sinister smile appeared. Indeed, the current psychiatric hospital has overlapped with the real world, like a real entity with demonic Kaz. So the hallway we were in earlier that we couldn't see turned out to be inside already. This psychiatric hospital has swallowed the hallway. Could this be the so-called demon world? After some contemplation, the two continued to move forward. Suddenly, the faces of both of them stiffened in an instant as they discovered blood everywhere in the corridor, along with the torn uniforms of the security guards and the working uniform of a woman. Seeing this, Fang Hou fully understood. The female colleague in the sales hall is petite, with a smaller body and less muscle compared to men. So the time it takes for demons to eat a man is about 3 minutes, while eating a woman only takes 2 minutes. This is the time they disappear. Hearing this, Zhao Hao beside him suddenly turned pale. Do you mean they were all eaten by demons? At this moment, Fang Hou sat on the ground, carefully observing the torn clothing and said, "We are temporarily safe. Jia Liang has just been taken away." Zhao Hao shivered, so the demon is somewhere eating Jia Liang's flesh. At this moment, Fang Hou paid no attention, but stared at the end of the hallway, lost in thought. Most of the strange things here are locked in the sick room. Even though some of the sick room doors are open, the strange things in them have long escaped, which were not encountered in the old psychiatric hospital. And these clothes aren't neatly cut, clearly caused by some kind of knife. Based on the evidence, it can only be the female doctor he met before, because as a doctor, she is not locked in the sick room and can move freely. Fang Hou looked down the hallway, thinking, what exactly is the strange thing that can move freely here? Then suddenly, in another part of the hallway, there was a sound of chaotic footsteps, a sound getting closer. Fang Hou and Zhao Hao suddenly shrank, horrified, looking in the direction of the sound. When the sound was getting closer and closer, Zhao Hao was extremely frightened, while Fang Hou, who was used to strange things, also showed a fearful expression. In the dark hallway, Wang Zitang and the others all looked incredulous, seeing the familiar place suddenly transformed into a scene of the hospital. Everyone couldn't help but show fear. Seeing this, Fang Hou and Zhao Hao appeared very helpless, at the same time feeling lucky instead of being helpless. I didn't expect them to follow. Luckily, the sound just now wasn't from a demon. At this moment, Wu Dahai looked at Fang Hou on the opposite side, trembling, and asked, "Did you see Zhao Uncle and Wang Xiao Lai?" Right at this moment, Lai Fai Fi suddenly screamed, pointing to the blood under Fang Hao's feet. There's so much blood. Hearing that, Wang Zitang stared intently, and in a flash, cold sweat dripped down his face. That's the clothes of Zhao Uncle and Wang Xiao Lai. Could it be that they had been eaten? At this point, Lai Fai Fi grabbed his trembling arm. "Wang, let's leave here quickly. I want to go home." At this moment, Wang Zitang suddenly woke up and said, "Yes, let's go." Then he looked at Fang Hou next to him and said, "You lead the way." But at this moment, Fang Hou and Zhao Hao didn't say a word. Fang Hou even had a gloomy look on his face as he stared at his phone. Suddenly, he looked at everyone emotionlessly and said, "Time's up." Hearing this, Lai Fai Fi, who was in a state of fear, couldn't help but ask, "Time's up for what?" As soon as she finished speaking, there was a rustling sound from the ceiling. Lai Fai Fang and Wang Zitang mechanically turned their heads to look back, only to see a woman doctor who looked like a spider suddenly appear on the ceiling. She was wearing an old tattered white and blue gown. Her hair was messy, and she was hanging upside down on the ceiling. The rustling sound was from her turning her head. Seeing this, Lai Fai Fi was so scared that she didn't know what to do. She stood there in shock, overwhelmed by fear that was like a rising tide. And in the next moment, the crazed doctor began flailing her arms and legs like a humanoid spider, quickly crawling towards everyone. At this point, everyone seemed to go crazy and ran for their lives. This time, Wang Zitang didn't need anyone to guide him. He even felt they were blocking the way ahead. At this moment, Wang Zitang suddenly stopped, feeling something tugging in his clothes, scared to the point his heart felt like it was jumping out of his throat. Then he slowly turned around, only to see Lai Fai Fi lying on the ground, tears streaming down her face, grabbing onto his clothes, begging Wang Zitang to save her. At the same time, the female doctor was quickly approaching. Seeing this, Wang Zitang immediately gave her a strong slap. "Don't obstruct me here." Then Wang Zitang ran and shouted, directly passing Fang Hou and Zhao Hao. Fang Hao had no intention of running away, standing there indifferent, observing what had just happened. Yes, indeed, the female doctor had met him before. Lai Fai Fi was so scared that her whole body went limp, crawling on the ground, out screaming in terror. "Wang, don't leave me." But Wang Zitang and the others had already disappeared. Then they looked at the two remaining figures in the hallway. She quickly reached out for help, tears streaming down her face as she looked at them pleadingly. "Ko Hao, please help me." At the same time, the long hair of the female doctor fell down, and only the doctor grabbed her hair, holding a surgical knife in one hand. But now she was not the spiritual master, so Fang Hou dared not risk going forward to save her, only standing by to observe. The female doctor grabbed the girl's hair with one hand while pulling out a surgical knife from her side. As the surgical knife slowly approached the girl's neck, Lai Fai Fi kept crying and pleading with Fang Hou and Zhao Hao, were being cautious. Before Lai Fai Fi's words could finish, a silver flash of light passed by, and fresh blood immediately sprayed out endlessly, like a fountain of water gushing out. Seeing this, Zhao Hao was terrified, stammering. Lai Fai Fi died like that. At this moment, Lai Fai Fi was lying on the ground, her eyes closed, blood continuously pouring from her neck. However, the female doctor who killed Lai Fai Fi did not stop. but continued to wield a knife, beginning to dissect her 4 limbs. Seeing this scene, Fang Hou broke out in a cold sweat. This female doctor is so accurate. She must have performed many surgeries in her past life. He and Zhao Hao were right next to her, but she didn't pay any attention, especially focused on Lai Fai Flei's body. At the same time, the demonic female doctor was licking fresh blood, extremely excited. After licking the blood off the knife, she then inserted it into the gap in Lai Fai Flei's chest. After that, she started to eat the flesh, a bloody scene that Fang Hou witnessed, realizing that killing was an instinct when becoming demonic. After understanding the rules of killing, Fang Hou made a bold decision. He slowly approached the medical room. Quickly, he stood beside the female doctor. Suddenly, Fang Hou clenched his fist and punched her hard. There was a loud bang, a heavy impact, and at that moment, Fang Hou was astonished as he pulled back his fist and saw the blood flowing along his knuckles, exclaiming, "That's tough as steel." This punch made him realize the difference between himself and the female doctor. All the demonic creatures he had encountered possessed a deadly power that humans could not resist, making humans seem weak and helpless in front of them. It seemed that only by becoming a spiritual master could this situation be changed. At that moment, Zhao Hao trembled and said, "Fang Hou, let's run." But Fang Hou not only did not run, but also calmly stood in place, saying, "The rule of killing for this demonic creature is to kill the nearest person, and pointing at her while she is eating is the safest time to act." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Hao was so scared that he continued, "But I think she's almost finished eating." Seeing Fang Hou calm to the point of being terrifying, he spoke emotionlessly. "Although the Lai Fai feet looks bloody, the areas that need meat are all very full, so our meat supply should last at least 3 minutes or more." Hearing this, Zhao Hao, who was already extremely tense, suddenly felt nauseous. He bowed his head and vomited, but Fang Hou didn't pay attention to him. Instead, he thought to himself, Wang Zitang said that to become a spiritual master, one must let the power of the demonic take over their mind. And in this entire demonic territory, the place with the strongest demonic power is undoubtedly next to the demonic, and contact with the body will surely be evaded a little faster. After thinking this, he stared at the 2.5 meters long legs of the female doctor. Afterwards, he reached out directly and began to stroke. At this point, Fang Hao felt a very cold sensation, as if he was touching a dead body. Zhao Hao, who had just finished vomiting, saw this scene from behind and immediately felt as if he were collapsing. Immediately after that, he was extremely shocked and shouted loudly, "Fang Hao, I always thought that I was crazy enough, but I didn't expect you to be so shameless, even daring to take advantage of the demon's body." As Fang Hao stroked his long legs without expression, he said, "You can stay a little longer. If you're afraid, you can go first." At this point, he looked at Fang Hao, thinking of what Wang Zitang had said earlier, and also understood Fang Hao's purpose. Immediately, he gritted his teeth and said, "Okay, let's do it at all costs." After that, he stubbornly walked towards the female doctor. Fang Hao saw him approaching, immediately reached out behind, giving way to Zhao Hao. Zhao Hao was seen sitting next to the long legs that immersed in the struggle of thought. He then closed his eyes, turned his head to one side, and at the same time, reached out his right hand. Quickly, he placed his trembling hand on it. At this moment, Zhao Hao felt like he was struck by lightning, took a deep breath. It's too cold. But he did not lift his hand. After the two of them touched for a while, Zhao Hao looked embarrassed at Fang Hou. "Fang Hou, it seems like you don't have any reaction. Do you have any changes in your body?" Fang Hou replied softly, "No." Then Zhao Hao spoke again. "I never thought that the first time I touched a woman's thigh, it would be a devil, but I have to say that these long legs are really long, even longer than mine." Seeing this, Fang Hou glanced at Zhao Hao, drooling, and couldn't help but marvel in his heart. This kid can adapt quite well. Although he was initially threatened and confused, now he's in a mood to joke. Who knows, he may have some potential. A moment later, Fang Hao looked at his phone and said, "Just a minute, give me another 30 seconds at most, leaving enough time to escape." Time flies by every second and minute. 30 seconds passed in the blink of an eye. Fang Hao didn't hesitate to stand up and run, and Zhao Hao, although a bit slower, followed closely behind. At this point, Zhao Hao, who was behind, wondered, "Fang Hao, are you sure we can escape? Have you been here before? Why are you so familiar with this place?" It turned out that when he entered the psychiatric hospital, Fang Hao paid special attention to the direction of certain main routes. Therefore, he was confident in using the terrain advantage to stretch the distance from the female doctor. However, as Fang Hou and Zhao Hao were about to reach the end of the hallway, the situation changed. Suddenly, in front of Fang Hao appeared a few strands of black hair. Seeing this, Fang Hao looked up and met the fierce red eyes of the female doctor. At that moment, Fang Hou was startled. Could my prediction be wrong? According to the estimation of Lai Fai Flei's flesh, there should be at least 2 more minutes to escape. But why is the female doctor chasing after us so fast? Thinking about this, he immediately turned to look at Lai Fei-Fei's body, and then his pupils dilated, only to see that Lai Fei-Fei's body had been eaten clean, turned into a pool of blood, with several large pieces of silicone clearly left on that pool of blood. He completely exploded. Fake silicone. He calculated the weight, but unexpectedly made a mistake at this point. Right at this moment, a bright light flashed behind him, and at the same time, Fang Hou screamed desperately, "I hope heaven has no silicone," and this also led him to die once again at the hands of a demon. He thought that this death would bring him back to his wife, but when Fang Hou woke up, he was surprised to find that he had not returned to his wife, but was still with the female doctor and was touching her thigh. At the same time, Zhao Hao, who was next to him, hesitantly walked over and also reached out to touch the female doctor. Immediately, Fang Hou hurriedly took out his phone to check the time. A thought came to him like a tide. Could it be that coming back after death is like playing a game? The first stage is near the residential area, and this second stage is King Shan's psychiatric hospital. That's why this time I'm not coming back to my wife because I passed the first stage. So the time left automatically moves to the second stage. At this time, Fang Hou didn't have time to think much. Last time he died because of silicon, so this time he absolutely cannot make the same mistake. Thinking of this, Fang Hou immediately stood up and patted Zhao Hao on the shoulder next to him, saying, "Okay, let's go." Zhao Hao, with a regretful look, said, "Fang Hou, I've just started and I have to leave already. This is my first time." Before he could finish speaking, Fang Hou turned and left, saying lightly, "She's all silicone, so there's not enough meat to sustain for long." Hearing this, Zhao Hao was immediately stunned and then extremely surprised. "Silicone? Why is it so big?" After saying that, the two of them ran swiftly and quickly reached the stairs. At this point, Fang Hou firmly said, "Go down." After running for a while in the stairs, they met Wang Zai Tang and others. At this moment, Wang Zai Tang was keeping watch behind, and the sound behind made his heart beat fast. Seeing him at this moment, he looked like a frightened bird, hastily waving his hands and running. "The demon is coming, run up fast." Seeing this, Fang Hou was extremely suspicious and immediately called out Wang Zai Tang. Then Fang Hou accelerated, decisively jumped from the upper floor, firmly landing in front of them. At this time, Wu Nahai wiped his sweat in fear. "It's you two kids, you scared us to death. We thought it was a demon chasing us." At the same time, Zhao Hao looked surprised at everyone. "Why are you guys running so slowly?" Hearing that, the whole group angrily turned to look at him. "This slow, but we have already descended at least 20 floors. I don't know how tall this building is." Zhao Hao was immediately extremely surprised. 20 floors, impossible. Fang Hou and I have only descended 3 floors and met you guys. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone opened their eyes in shock. "What, Zhao Hao? Don't talk nonsense at this point or I'll hit you." Wang Zai Tang, who was standing next to him, only reacted now with a horrified look and his whole body trembling. This is the demon guide. At this moment, he was sweating profusely, not knowing what to do. It must be the demon guide. Then he looked in horror at one of them. My cousin said that the power of demons can cause hallucinations capable of creating the phenomenon of the demon guide. Whoever encounters the demon guide will continuously walk around in circles, unable to escape. That's also why Fang Hou and the others were able to catch up to them so quickly, because they were always walking around in circles. Fang Hou looked at everyone in a state of panic, unable to help but think, "How interesting, the demon guide." Wang Zai Tang's words were like adding fuel to the fire, making everyone even more scared. Seeing this, Fang Hou looked helpless, then reached into his pocket to search for something, and then calmly looked at everyone. "Whoever among you has something extra, throw it on the ground to mark our way." Upon hearing this, Wang Zai Tang immediately understood and hastily coordinated a loud shout. "Yes, mark the way, quickly bring out the unnecessary things here." By the time everyone understood, it was too late, and immediately everyone worried. Belongings fell to the ground, including water bottles, cigarettes, lighters, and even Wang Zai Tang's condoms. After marking the way, Fang Hou turned back to look at everyone behind him. "Let's go, we're going downstairs." Everyone followed suit. Fang Hou cautiously went down the stairs, but after reaching a floor, they suddenly stopped at a corner. They saw the items they had marked earlier now appearing before them. Seeing this, everyone couldn't contain their fear and screamed in horror. "This is the lighter I just threw. My money too, we're really done for this time. We have truly encountered the demon guide. What do we do now? If the demon chases us in a while, we'll die." At this moment, Fang Hou's face turned gloomy as he picked up the condom that Wang Zai Tang had just thrown. It looks like Wang Zai Tang was right. We have encountered the demon guide, just wandering around. Right at that moment, Wang Zai Tang shouted loudly, "Stop yelling, my cousin said that ordinary people cannot escape the demon guide. To break free, We must rely on intuition to recognize it. Quickly check if anyone has intuition. After speaking, he focused his mind and prayed, I hope I can unlock my intuition. He wasn't sure if being chased and killed by demons before could be considered a life and death experience, but now he could only pray. The others looked confused. How do we check if we have intuition? A boy next to him also looked puzzled. I don't know either. Then he hesitantly said, or should we try the same as Wam? After that, he clasped his hands and began to pray. At this time, Fang Hou did not pay attention to their actions, but went down the stairs beginning to grope. Fang Hou remembered, when passing by the psychiatric hospital before, the exit of the stairs was on the right, even though I didn't know what building this is, but the layout is probably not much different, because the demon guide is caused by hallucinations. So close my eyes, use my hand to feel on the right, and go down. There is a high chance to find the door. At this time, Wang Zitang noticed Fang Hou's actions and looked back at him with suspicion. Fang Hou, where are you going? But Fang Hou didn't pay attention to him and went down the stairs by himself. Instead of sitting here praying in vain, it's better to focus on searching for clues. Seeing this, Zhao Hao quickly followed, while Wang Zitang looked at Fang Hou's actions from behind, lost in thought. He felt that Fang Hou was not okay, too calm. From beginning to end, there was no panic on his face, even when he encountered the demon. At that time, after the female demon appeared, Fang Hou was the closest, but he did not run away immediately, but instead stood close to the wall to avoid being knocked down. We all ran to the stairs, but the other three did not follow. Now that Lai Fai Fi is missing, it goes without saying that she is dead. But the two men and the female demon were in the hallway for at least a minute. What did they do? Why didn't the demon kill them? Could it be that they are using the demon? Thinking of this, Wang Zitang kept shaking his head, dismissing this strange thought. It's impossible. It's a demon. The other two saw him thinking confusedly. At the same time, Fang Hou and Zhao Hao had gone down the stairs, away from everyone else. I only saw Fang Hou touching the wall as he walked, but he only felt the solid and rough walls without any other strange sounds. Seeing that, Zhao Hao looked at him suspiciously. Fang Hou, what are you doing? Just let me go, I'll help you. But at this time, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to him and went to the stairs by himself, stepping down one by one, 11, 12. At the same time, his hand continued to touch the wall. Suddenly, he stopped at the 15th step. At this time, the dirt on his hand became smooth and cold, as if he had touched metal. Only at this moment did Fang Hou's pupils tremble, and he couldn't help but say, I found it. Zhao Hao was puzzled. Found what? Then Zhao Hao followed Fang Hou. Very quickly, he also realized the difference. At this time, he couldn't help but be extremely happy. It's a door, Fang Hou. You're amazing. Hearing that, Wang Zitang was extremely shocked on the top floor. He looked at Fang Hou with an incredulous look and immediately ran to Fang Hou, pushing him out of the door. Wang Zitang looked ecstatic and pointed at the iron door, laughing loudly. We're saved, there's a door here. But the next second, the smile on Wang Zitang's face slowly disappeared, replaced by a look of despair as he stared at the iron door in front of him. But how do we open this door? After Fang Hou finished speaking, he also frowned, feeling doubtful in his heart. After thinking for a while, Fang Hou stepped forward, quickly found the door handle, and then anxiously and hopefully tried to open the door, praying in his heart that it wasn't locked. All of a sudden, there was a click and the door opened. Seeing this, he pushed the iron door open, hitting him in the face, revealing a long and dark corridor. Seeing this, Fang Hou was about to go in, but at that moment, Wang Zitang seemed to go crazy, pushing Fang Hou out again and being the first to rush in. Seeing this, Fang Hou frowned but said nothing more. Then the others, seeing the way out in front of them, also went crazy rushing in. Fang Hou, however, stood in place and watched everyone. At this moment, Zhao Hao turned back to look at Fang Hou with a puzzled look. Why aren't you running, Fang Hou? Why are you so calm? As he finished speaking, Fang Hou suddenly smiled cunningly. Faced with danger, they only think of running away. But the interesting thing is that facing a female doctor is like facing a demon. There's no need to run too fast. At the same time, behind them, there came a surprised voice. You two run quickly. If you don't run, get out of the way. As for me, if I want to die, don't drag me with you. But at this time, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to him, but thought to himself, sometimes running too fast may not be a good thing. As long as I make sure I'm not the last person, then it's convenient to touch the female doctor's thigh, early identification of instincts. Moreover, at this psychiatric hospital, there is a strange escape situation. The previous encounter was just luck. If I meet one, it will be very interesting. On the other side, Wang Zitang was walking ahead and suddenly stopped. The people behind him also stopped one by one. It turned out that in front of them appeared a fork in the road, one on the left and one on the right. Both branches were very long. No one could see the situation behind the two roads. Everyone looked at the fork and then at each other. Suddenly, a man looked at one of the two branches, pointed to the left, and said, "I'll try the left side first." The man immediately got angry. "You're really smart. You want to harm me, don't you? Why don't you go by yourself?" At this moment, Fang Hou walked over and immediately everyone's attention turned to him. Wang Zitang hurriedly asked, "Fang Hou, which way should we go? When we were chased by the demon guide earlier, you were the one who found the way out, so you must know the way to escape." Fang Hou frowned once again. "You pushed me away when we were running, and now you remember me when you're in trouble." Thinking about this, Fang Hou couldn't help but laugh, which made everyone angry and embarrassed. "What are you laughing at? Hurry up and speak. The demon is catching up, and you're still pretending, asking us to trust you. You're still acting like the boss here." But at that moment, Fang Hou didn't pay attention to them, because to him, these people were just tools. Next, Fang Hou went to the right turn while thinking to himself, "Currently, the female doctor is unbeatable. If I want to prolong the time, the only way is to use people as a substitute." At the same time, everyone saw Fang Hou going to the right. They also did not hesitate to follow, choosing to run to the right, but at this moment, the sound of bone joints creaked. Hearing that sound, everyone knew that it was the sound of the female doctor. And currently, the person running last is manager Wu Dahai, with a round body, so his physical condition is not good. At the same time, Fang Hou remained calm and smiled slyly. "She's here. It's interesting." Right at this moment, the figure of the female doctor suddenly appeared on the ceiling, quickly rushing towards the last person in the team, only seeing the female doctor like a spider, her white and blue coat standing out in the hallway. She hung upside down on the ceiling, turning her head, her yellow eyes staring at everyone. At that moment, the crowd immediately panicked, risking their lives to run forward, but the speed of a basic human could not be compared with the female doctor. In the blink of an eye, she appeared on the top of Wu Dahai's head. Seeing this, Wu Dahai frantically ran away, with only one thought in his head: "I can't die." He then reached out and grabbed the collar of someone, saying, "Why are you running faster than me? This is fate. The one who must die is you." Then he pulled back with force, using the momentum to run forward, and the person he pulled fell backwards. Now he sat trembling on the ground, becoming the last person just waiting to die. The next moment, a silver light flashed, and the person Wu Dahai had pulled back was now the one whose throat had been cut. Even unable to scream in despair, the head separated from the body, and at this time, Wu Dahai did not feel any remorse. He turned his head back, muttering to himself, Xiao Chen, you can rest assured, on the day of the festival, I will burn incense for you." At the same time, Fang Hou also slowly stopped. Seeing this scene, Fang Hou couldn't help but disdain. Someone who has lost their humanity, what difference is there from a demon? At the same time, the female doctor took out a scalpel and began to cut Xiao Chen. Fang Hou calmly walked towards her, not knowing how to quickly open the spiritual sense. Now can only try more, hoping to quickly open the spiritual sense, become a spiritual master to reduce the loss of life. At this moment, Zhao Hao suddenly found that Fang Hou had disappeared in the crowd, anxiously looking for him. Suddenly, Zhao Hao froze in place. Seeing Fang Hou approaching the female doctor again, he sat down next to her and then put his hands on her thigh. Suddenly, a voice rang out from the side, and a trembling hand slapped him in the face. "Fang Hou, don't eat alone like that," touching someone's thigh without calling her. The red-faced man said, seemingly excited, eagerly staring at the thigh. "Next time you have the chance to touch a thigh, you must call her." He then began to molest, continuously praising, "Your skin is so smooth and white like jade. Do living girls feel like this too? Fang Hou, have you ever touched like this before?" At this point, Fang Hou paid no attention to him, but just smiled and said, "Indeed a pervert." Still able to say these words now. Who knows the truth about him? May be able to escape from this psychiatric hospital together with me. Time passed quickly, and before long it was time for the appointment. Fang Hou and Zhao Hao quickly ran to where everyone was. At this moment, Fang Hou said seriously, "Aren't you afraid of being killed by the female ghost?" Hearing this, Zhao Hao clearly accepted the reality. Waiting to die is more uncomfortable than being killed directly. Plus, you're still here with me. Fang Hou immediately looked at him helplessly. Soon, the two caught up with everyone else, and then they went to a restaurant, a very big restaurant with no one in sight. Zhao Hao was thinking, will there be any food? Can't work overtime without eating, and we ran straight to this time. I'm starving now. At the same time, Wang Zitang was very excited. Restaurants usually have back doors. Let's split up and search. After saying that, he looked at the other two and started drawing a cake. Don't rush to look for food. Find the way out first. Once we're out, I'll treat you to a feast as much as you want. Fang Hou looked around and said to himself, I'm afraid I don't have that kind of luck. Seeing this, Wu Dahai quickly flattered Wang, "Don't pay attention to that kid. Even if he doesn't have a place to stay, I'll dig one for you." At the same time, a colleague behind them shouted, "There's a door here." Upon hearing this, Wang Zitang immediately became excited. "Don't move, let me do it." He joyfully ran to the door, muttering continuously, "We're saved, we're saved." He then turned the doorknob and rushed in first. Seeing this, everyone followed suit. At the end, there was a narrow door, and the closer Fang Hou got, the more uneasy he felt. The environment grew darker, the light seemed to be suppressed, indicating that they were entering a sinister area, not just a normal door. Quickly, everyone ran to the end. At this point, Wang Zitang noticed that the door was unlocked. He opened it, only to find a room full of clutter. Luckily, there were no demons inside, so Wang Zitang no longer had the same smiling face as before, but instead looked extremely angry. "Damn it, there's no way out here. We've been trapped by demons." He clenched his jaw. At this time, Fang Hou remained calm. "We chose the wrong path. It looks like next time we should choose the left path." Then he tilted his head and looked back. "It's too late to turn back now. Although we can sacrifice one person to help others escape, but no one knows how far we have to run or how many more lives we have to take. It's better to go back and find the female demon to die and come back to life." After some thought, Fang Hou resolutely turned back. Seeing this, Zhao Hao quickly tried to stop him. "Fang Hou, if you go back now, you'll definitely run into the female demon." But as Fang Hou prepared to step out of the door, a burst of reprimand came from behind. "It's really absurd. If it wasn't for you choosing the wrong path, would we have been trapped here?" Fang Hou did not get angry, but instead smiled cunningly. "Blame me, how interesting humans really are." Seeing this, Zhao Hao angrily retorted, "Fang Hou did not force you. You chose to follow him voluntarily. Earlier you asked for directions. Now that you have chosen the wrong path, you blame him. If you are capable, then choose your own path." Immediately, Wu Dahai spoke venomously. "We may not have the courage, but at least we will not make decisions on our own like he did. If we don't know the way, we can discuss it. We trusted him to choose, who knows he would close his eyes and choose randomly." These words made Zhao Hao, who was not good at speaking, so angry that he couldn't say a word. At the same time, Wang Zitang stepped forward to prevent the two people from arguing. "All right, stop arguing. Arguing now is useless. Our urgent task now is to find a way to survive and escape." He then relied on Fang Hao's previous words to analyze. "In my opinion, observing this demon, it only attacks one person at a time, and then there will be 2 to 3 minutes of safety. So the only way now is to choose one person to lure the demon, creating an opportunity for everyone to escape." When Wang Zitang finished speaking, the atmosphere in the room immediately became strange. Fang Hou stood next to him with a slight smile because he knew Wang Zitang had calculated everything in his mind. When everyone blamed themselves, it was not surprising to be chosen to die. Thinking about this, Fang Hou couldn't help but laugh. At the same time, Wang Zitang took the initiative to attack, moving toward Fang Hou. He pushed Fang Hou and said loudly, "If it weren't for me..." Upon receiving the signal, Wu Dahai immediately reacted, using his fat body to press heavily on the skinny Zhao Hao. Quickly, Zhao Hao was pressed to the ground. "Wang, young master, I've got him under control." At the same time, Zhao Hao kept struggling. "You're a jerk. Let go of me, you pig. Let me go." Wang Zitang was kneeling on the ground, panting heavily. Right at this moment, Fang Hou suddenly slammed the iron door shut, making a loud noise. Hearing the noise, the people who were still fighting were confused and yelled, "Who did that?" At this moment, Fang Hou stood at the door, looking inside through the window on the door. Inside and outside the door seemed like 2 different worlds. Outside, Fang Hou looked at them with a strange look, while inside, everyone looked shocked, and the girls covered their eyes and dared not look, saying, "It's not my business, I didn't do anything." Zhao Hao couldn't even stand up. In pain, he cried out, "Fang Hou." At this moment, Wang Zitang looked at the small window on the door. A pale face was calmly smiling at them. Seeing this, he immediately felt a shiver and asked in horror, "Are you human or demon?" Suddenly, Fang Hou calmly replied, "I always thought I wouldn't be interested in humans, but unexpectedly, humans are much more interesting than demons." Then he looked up, smiling at them. "Thank you. Because of you, I have more interest in this world. Next time, I will repay you." At the same time, a rustling sound was heard. The female doctor quickly moved towards Fang Hou, and although he heard the noise, he didn't even turn around, still smiling at them. Then, with a swoosh, a silver light flash, Fang Hao's head fell down, but he didn't change his expression, still smiling at them. When Fang Hao's body slammed heavily to the ground, Wang Zitang inside the house shouted loudly, "Run right now." With that, he and Wu Dahai quickly opened the door, bravely ran outside. At this moment, Zhao Hao was in tears, crying out in pain. "Fang Hou, Come save me. At the same time, as Wang Zitang ran away, he did not forget to turn and look at Fang Hou, but the triumphant expression on his face suddenly disappeared, replaced by surprise as he saw Zhao Hao embracing Fang Hou and crying, while Fang Hou still maintained a smile, his eyes calm as he quietly looked at Wang Zitang. Wang Zitang felt a sense of fear as he looked at Fang Hou's head. His heart seemed to stop beating, and he felt as if Fang Hou was saying, "Wait." In the blink of an eye, a cold feeling of slipperiness spread from Fang Hao's palm. At this point, Fang Hou adjusted his head and muttered, "Back again." Immediately, he calmly stood up and said, "Let's go." Seeing this, Zhao Hao was not satisfied, full of suspicion. "Fang Hou, why are you leaving? Didn't I say?" Fang Hou replied, "It's silicon." After that, Fang Hou led Zhao Hao away, a sly smile on his lips. Not long after, they met Wang Zitang and others again. At this time, Fang Hou still jumped down from the stairs. Then he didn't look back and went down to the lower floor. At the same time, Zhao Hao looked at everyone suspiciously. "Why are you all running so slowly?" The man spoke gently, but with a puzzling look. "Still slow. We have at least gone down 20 floors. On the other side, Fang Hou repeated the way he did before he died, counting the steps going down. At the same time, Wang Zitang and others were still arguing. "We bet the demon guide just keep wandering around." Before they could finish their words, they heard a loud noise as Fang Hou opened the iron door. Seeing this, everyone was stunned. Didn't we say it was the demon guide? Why did we find the escape route so quickly? But Zhao Hao just smiled. Why still be knave? Run quickly. At this point, Wang Zitang's face was complicated. He looked at Fang Hou ahead suspiciously. "Have you awakened the spirit, haven't you?" Very quickly, they reached the intersection just like before. Wang Zitang was the first to speak. "You found the door immediately earlier, so you must also know the way out. Fang Hou, quickly get us out of here, just leave us outside, and we will definitely reward you." But at this moment, Fang Hou paid no attention to him and looked at his phone, then calmly said, "One more minute, 1 minute before the demon appears." Hearing this, Wang Zitang was overjoyed. "So you even know the time the demon appears? It seems you have truly become a spiritual master. Just lead me out of the demon, and I will give you 500,000 yuan. Finishing his words, Fang Hou slowly turned around, a smile on his face. Seeing this, Wang Zitang was full of expectation, and then Fang Hou gave a strange smile. "Not so fast. Before we go, I have one thing to do." Wang Zitang looked at him with a puzzled expression, even feeling a sense of foreboding incomprehensibly. Suddenly, Fang Hou kicked him in the lower body. Immediately, a desperate scream echoed everywhere. For a moment, it seemed like there was a sound of a broken egg. At this time, Wang Zitang frowned, sweating profusely, every desperate cry coming from his mouth, while Fang Hou looked at him kneeling on the ground, clutching his lower body in pain, couldn't help but feel triumphant. Then Fang Hou looked at him with a sly smile. 500,000 yuan to save your eggs." He tried to suppress the pain and slowly opened his mouth. "If you feel the money is not enough, just say it. Why kick my eggs?" Fang Hou, on the other hand, looked indifferent, watching him writhing on the ground, groaning. At this time, the people around all appeared angry, especially Wu Dahai, pointing at Fang Hou and scolding loudly. "Fang Hou, what are you doing? Why suddenly kick someone? Why attack someone out of the blue and using such a despicable trick?" Hearing this, Fang Hou calmly explained, "The speed of this demon is much faster than that of a human, so surely someone will die in a minute. But now, Wang Zitang has lost the ability to act, so the person who will die is definitely him. So I am saving everyone." Hearing that, everyone was stunned. Wu Nahai was even more bewildered, not understanding what was going on. "Save us. Something seems to be wrong." At this moment, Fang Hou stepped forward, followed by a familiar sound of shattering. Now Wu Dahai's face twisted in pain as he groaned loudly, while Fang Hou stood beside him, indifferent. "I told you, it's to save everyone. You deserve to die long ago." Wu Dahai's posture at this moment was exactly like Wang Zitang's, embracing the intense pain and groaning. His cries of agony were non-stop, but clearly his endurance was not as strong as Wang Zitang's. After 2 hours of agonizing cries, he foamed at the mouth and passed out. Seeing this, Zhao Hao unconsciously hugged Wu Dahai and said to Fang Hou, "You're so ruthless." Another person looked confused, then angrily glared at Fang Hou. "What do you want to do? In a short period of time, how come you suddenly attacked twice, directly causing serious injuries to 2 people at the same time?" Fang Hou directly turned away, ignoring him, and then he walked straight on his own, but the man still refused to let go and angrily shouted, "Attacking Wang's son to save us, so why attack Manager Engo?" Suddenly, Fang Hou slightly turned his head back, looking at him with an unchanged face to preserve a backup person. Upon hearing this, Zhao Hao raised his hands. Indeed, Fang Hou is still cautious. The man who was angry just now clenched his jaw and choked up at this time. Everyone began to discuss fearfully. Disposing of one person is as good as being finished, and yet he still wants to reserve a backup person. Is he still a human being? Truly destructive. At the same time, Fang Hou stood at the intersection, pointing in one direction. The right is the road of death. If you want to live, go left. Time for you is running out. After speaking, Fang Hou crossed his arms in front of his chest, leaned against the wall, closed his eyes. At this point, everyone looked at Fang Hou with suspicion. If the left side is the safe way, why didn't you go by yourself? Is there danger ahead in the corridor? Do you see us as a backup? Upon hearing this, Fang Hou calmly looked at everyone and said, I'm waiting to see who flinches. You all have only 10 seconds to run away. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone except Zhao Hao, who was extremely excited, thought they had misheard him. They looked at him with disbelief. What do you mean by see who flinches? Meanwhile, Zhao Hao was extremely excited. Another chance. Fang Hou was playing see who flinches, take me with you. Hee hee, let's go legs. Just as the two were questioning Fang Hou, suddenly the familiar sound of joints moving echoed, and the female doctor attacked from the ceiling. Her head turned 180 degrees, her eyes glaring at the people below. Immediately, both of them screamed in fear. The man shouted to the woman behind him, quick, run to the left. Immediately, both of them turned and started running frantically, but they were afraid that Fang Hou was tricking them. After a while, they began to hesitate and stopped at the left hallway. Then they cowered in a corner, looking out at Fang Hou, who was not only not running, but also calmly standing still. At this moment, the female doctor had reached them, and Wang Zitang looked at Fang Hou in horror, saying, Fang Hou, save me. Before he could finish speaking, Wang Zitang suddenly felt that something was not right. Immediately, he raised his hand to his eyes and froze in place, only to see that his hand was continuously bleeding. At this moment, he was completely mad with anger and hatred in his eyes. Shortly after, he reached for Fang Hou's pants, screaming in pain, Fang Hou, you're dead to me. With a loud thud, Fang Hou stomped his foot directly on Wang Zitang's hand, pinning it under his foot. The intense pain made him cry out. Then Fang Hou slowly sat down and looked at him. Don't worry, I won't go anywhere. I'll stay here with you. Suddenly, Fang Hou's expression changed, becoming cruel and gloomy. Not only will I stay here with you, but I'll also stay here and watch you die. At the same time, the doctor's hand was placed on his face, causing him to scream in agony, don't. In the next moment, with Wang Zitang's final scream, his neck was snapped. His eyes filled with absolute horror and a deep-seated grudge. He died with his eyes open. At the same time, Wang Zitang's fresh blood sprayed on the Fang Hou's face. Along with that warm feeling, he died on the spot. Fang Hou then licked the blood. This was the taste of revenge, the first time he had tasted the flavor of revenge. At that moment, Fang Hou was extremely excited, running his hand through his hair. This feeling isn't bad either. At this moment, Fang Hou could feel his heartbeat. He held his chest. His whole body couldn't help but tremble. Then he laughed wildly. Why is my heart beating so fast? At this moment, he couldn't help but start to imagine. Imagine what it would feel like one day if his wife died in his arms. How beautiful that scene would be. But very soon after, Fang Hou's face returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. Then he went behind the female doctor, put a leg on her shoulder, and started touching her thigh as usual. At this point, the two people far away completely panicked at Fang Hou's actions. They looked at each other with cold sweat running down their faces. He just said touching thighs. It turns out it's real, touching the thighs of a demon. Suddenly, Fang Hou turned his head to look at Zhao Hao next to him. Before being reborn, he still remembered very clearly what Zhao Hao did in the storage room. Although he did not have any emotions, Fang Hou still hoped to help Zhao Hao more. After a moment of thinking, Fang Hou suddenly shouted in a way that scared Zhao Hao, as if lightning had struck next to his ear. Fang Hou pulled Zhao Hao's thigh with one hand and pointed at him with the other hand, his face covered in blood, his pale skin contrasting with the fresh red blood, creating a strange and terrifying beauty. Seeing this scene, the two who had just been threatened by demons ran away, only to be threatened by Fang Hou again with a terrifying, oh my god, demons. At this point, Zhao Hao was also amazed. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou sighed. So that's it. It seems that dying 21 times has left my mind with only thoughts of revenge and madness. Fang Hou could feel that it was now very difficult for him to have fluctuating emotions. His humanity was slowly disappearing, but Zhao Hao was different. If he didn't want to, Fang Hou wouldn't force him. In this moment of hesitation, Zhao Hao finally decided to trust Fang Hou. Shortly after that, he loudly spoke to Fang Hou. Your house is ordinary, your appearance is mediocre, and at the real estate brokerage company, it's always the one who is despised. Only Fang Hou is willing to hang out with me. Only you really consider me a friend. After saying this, he felt embarrassed and scratched his face. So, Fang Hou, believe me, but I look frightening. Blood on my face splattered as if I had just killed a pig. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Hao took a step towards Fang Hou, but at that moment, he accidentally kicked Wang Zitang in the head. Seeing this, Zhao Hao quickly raised his leg and apologized. "Oh my god, I'm sorry, young Master Wang. I didn't mean to call you a pig." After speaking, Zhao Hao's mouth curled up, his face blushed as he stretched out his hand. The two began to slowly touch each other's thigh. Suddenly, Zhao Hao suspiciously asked, "Fang Hou, why did you choose to confront Wang Zitang and Wu Dahai?" Fang Hou calmly explained, "This demon has a speed that humans cannot match. To survive, you can only use human lives to exchange for time. With the identity of the two of them, do you think they would push someone to sacrifice, be the one in conflict with them, or are you the one who is always looked down upon?" Listening, Zhao Hao's face paled slightly. At this moment, he was about to speak when Fang Hou suddenly raised his hand to interrupt. Then he said seriously, "Do you feel a strange cold air invading your body?" Zhao Hao shook his head. "No, I don't." At this moment, Fang Hao's heart trembled slightly, carefully feeling that it was not an illusion. There was a strange cold air from the doctor's thigh entering his palm, then spreading throughout his body. Could this be the invasion of demonic power? Closing his eyes, he carefully sensed such a faint cold air. "I didn't feel anything when I touched my thigh before. Is it because I'm about to reach a certain critical point now?" Thinking of this, Fang Hou opened his eyes suddenly. Could this be a sign for him to enlighten his intuition? At the same time, Zhao Hao next to him blushed, changing the way he touched his thigh, cold air invading the body. What kind of cold air is this? I have to say that these legs are quite cold. Is it because of my posture? Seeing this, Fang Hou immediately fell silent. After a while, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou and said, "Fang Hou, it's probably almost time. We should hurry." Hearing this, Fang Hou closed his eyes and said, "Not yet. Wu Dahai is not here. I feel like I'm about to have a spiritual awakening." At that moment, Wu Dahai was trembling on the side. Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou and said happily, "Really, you're about to have a spiritual awakening, so that means we're saved, right?" Then he scratched his head awkwardly and said, "Oh, what does it feel like to have a spiritual awakening? Why can't I feel anything?" Fang Hou looked serious and said, "Although you have been in contact with evil spirits for a long time, you have never experienced a real life and death situation. So psychologically, you are not prepared, and therefore you cannot feel it." After speaking, Fang Hou pulled Zhao Hao to a corner, and quickly after that, the female doctor grabbed Wu Dahai skillfully and cheerfully began to dissect. At this point, after knowing the reason, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou wanting to say to stop. "It's obvious that I have always been by Fang Hou's side. He has experienced life and death like that." After the female doctor finished dissecting the body, she hugged Wu Dahai and started eating. Seeing this, the two people moved forward and continued to touch the thigh. This fat of Wu Dahai is a lot. It'll last for 5 minutes without any problem. But Fang Hou still decided to only touch for 2 minutes, saving 3 minutes to escape. After that, he closed his eyes, subconsciously stroking the palm of his hand, seriously feeling the cold air coming in. In his consciousness, more and more cold air gathered in his body, but after entering the body, these cold air streams seemed to disappear without a trace. This situation made Fang Hou feel unsettled. He could feel these demonic air streams continuously invading his body, but in the end, where did they go? Are they spiritual? At this point, he couldn't help but sink into consciousness, letting his consciousness flow with the cold air like a floating leaf on a river, ultimately merging into the vast sea. And here, Fang Hou sensed there is a dark heart beating slowly, covered with a layer of dust that looks very dirty, and all the cold air streams eventually enter the heart, while the consciousness has no fixed shape, meaning that I can control the shape of consciousness. Immediately, Fang Hou agreed to think. The dark heart slowly transformed into a dagger and could even transform into himself. As more and more cold air streams entered the heart, it gradually emitted a faint light. Then all the demonic air streams began to gather towards the open corner of the heart, converging into a bright red light. Then they invaded the open corner of consciousness until finally all the red light merged into the black light, forming a bright red sphere. Finally, everything returned to silence at the same time. Fang Hou's senses became extremely sharp. His sense of smell, hearing, and taste were all enhanced. And beyond the sensory organs, even the speed of nerve reactions and the ability to control the body were all enhanced. He could easily manifest the latent strength in his muscles. At this moment, Fang Hou slowly opened his eyes, suddenly discovering as if a thin layer of veil was lifted, the most authentic world was completely exposed before him. At this moment, he sank into contemplation. Could it be that this is spirituality, the product of spirituality distorted by demonic power? And at this moment, Fang Hou's spirituality was only enlightened about 1%, needing to be integrated with enough demonic power in order to fully exert the greater power of spirituality. The ability of spiritual masters to heal is the manifestation of spiritual power. In the depths of his heart, what is most important, what is most desired, what is most necessary will be manifested. At this moment, Fang Hou could not help but doubt his own ability, or in other words, what is most desired in his heart. Thinking about this, Fang Hou began to apply his innate power as dark as ink, and immediately after that, he hugged his chest with an uncomfortable expression. Because his ability was painful, his attacks could make the attacker feel pain. Seeing this, Fang Hou was a bit disappointed. This can also be called a talent. At the same time, Fang Hou also understood that it turns out that deep down, I am all about suffering. But when Fang Hou began to apply his ability, he was surprised to find that a familiar pain rushed into his heart, whether it was the physical pain of death or the negative emotions and psychological distortions. Up to this point, he fully understood what his ability was. It was to make the enemy feel pain, which he had to endure. Thinking about this, Fang Hou couldn't help but let out a cold laugh, and then he couldn't help but burst out laughing. Excellent, I am very satisfied with his ability. At this moment, Zhao Hao was so scared that he gasped, suspecting and asking Fang Hou, "Have you succeeded, brother?" But Fang Hou did not answer. Instead, he raised his head and laughed heartily. At this moment, he screamed fiercely in his heart, tremendously excited, making even the evil spirits feel the same pain as him. Is there anything more wonderful in this world? This is what he desires most in his heart. Suddenly, Fang Hou's eyes became fierce. He thought of his wife. Fang Hou was immersed in this state, unable to escape, as if suddenly reaching extreme pleasure, closing his eyes to enjoy and smirk. Suddenly, Zhao Hao next to him interrupted Fang Hou's words. 2 minutes, Fang Hou. Hearing this, Fang Hou immediately became calm. Then he seriously looked at Zhao Hao. Step back a little. I want to test the power of the spiritual master. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Hao was ecstatic, immediately raised his index finger, and slowly stepped back. So you've really become a spiritual master, like Wang Zitang said. How amazing. Right after that, Fang Hou slowly approached the female doctor, walking up to her. He stood there, watching the doctor eat. Then, Fang Hou raised his left hand, transmitting spiritual power into it. Immediately after, Fang Hou tightened his fist, preparing to punch. This punch contained all the pain he had endured after 21 deaths. This level of pain, no one could stop. And as the number of deaths increased, the pain would accumulate and escalate. This meant was an infinite strengthening ability. Let her be the first to feel this pain. Finally, Fang Hou punched the female doctor in the face, but she didn't react at all while eating. At the same time, the female doctor suddenly let out a painful scream. Then she collapsed to the ground, holding her head and screaming continuously. Even her eating utensils, surgical knife, fell to the ground. Although the female doctor looked very painful, it was clear that she was not as painful as he was before. This punch in general was not very effective, only activating 1% of the spiritual power. After that, she also quickly recovered. A female doctor quickly recovered as usual and continued to eat by herself. At this time, Fang Hou stood still, lost in thought. The head of the female demon has no injuries. Obviously, the punch cannot break through her defense, leading to the possibility of obstructing the transmission of spiritual power. It seems that the power of the punch is limited. It is best to use weapons, but ordinary weapons may not be able to transmit spiritual power. At this moment, Zhao Hao suspectedly looked at Fang Hou. Fang Hou, why haven't we run yet? Immediately, he drooled again, looking greedily at her thighs. If you still have it left, I will touch you again, hey. At the same time, Fang Hou suddenly noticed a surgical knife on the ground. In that instant, the corners of his mouth curved up and said, "Isn't there already a weapon here?" Fang Hou didn't hesitate and directly crouched down to pick it up. When he held it, he felt as cold as an ice block. At the same time, as soon as he held it, Fang Hou felt a very intense negative emotion attacking his mind nonstop. This power contains the grievances, anger, and hatred of countless people. Not long after, fragmented images of countless half-human, half-demon demons being tied to the operating table continued to appear in Fang Hou's mind. It was at this moment that Fang Hou completely understood that in this psychiatric hospital, the female doctor had used this surgical knife to experiment on creatures full of resentment. Therefore, the knife absorbed the resentment of countless demons, and the female doctor was affected by the resentment to the point of madness and eventually turned into a vicious demon. This also meant that this knife was the real demon, and the female doctor was just influenced by it. At this moment, Fang Hou once again smiled sinisterly. So if I have this knife, can I kill the female doctor? Thinking this, Fang Hou was eager to experiment. Immediately after, he walked up to the female doctor and told Zhao Hao to stay away. Zhao Hao was immersed in pleasure, with a flushed face and outstretched hands, saying, "I only touched it for a moment." But suddenly he saw the knife in Fang Hao's hand, hastily changed his tone. Okay. Seeing Fang Hao's expressionless face, he began to gather strength. Then a silver flash of light passed, followed by the sound of metal collision. The doctor's neck showed no signs of injury at this time. Zhao Hao next to him quickly covered his ears. This sound really made people's hair stand on end, while Fang Hou was extremely surprised, staring at him. Impossible. At the same time, Zhao Hao lifted the doctor's collar to check, also extremely surprised and suspicious. "Fang Hao, this knife looks very sharp. How come it didn't hurt her when you stabbed her?" As soon as he spoke, Zhao Hao reached out to touch her neck, and immediately a 3,000-inch long spit flowed. Her face also turned red. His skin was really smooth and cool. It was comfortable to touch. Listening, Fang Hao didn't pay attention, but instead looked at the female doctor lost in thought. The surgical knife can cut countless demons. Why doesn't it work when I stab her? At this moment, Fang Hao suddenly reacted. Could it be spiritual? This surgical knife needs spirituality to control it, and right now, my spirituality is depleted, so I can't unleash its true power. Thinking about this, Fang Hou clenched one's jaw. It seems that revenge is temporarily out of reach. At this moment, the demon female doctor suddenly dropped the food, staring at them. At this point, Fang Hao didn't hesitate, telling Zhao Hao to turn around and run away. Zhao Hao didn't understand what was happening. With a reluctant expression on his face, "Fang Hao, you're already fond of something before even touching it." Upon hearing this, Fang Hao seemed helpless. "Just run, there's no time left now." At the same time, the demon female doctor suddenly stood up, looking around, constantly muttering, "Where's the knife?" On the other side, Fang Hao and the other person quickly ran out of the hallway, then into a large, very empty and quiet hall. Suddenly, Fang Hao sensed a disturbance. Since his spiritual enlightenment, his senses had become sharper. He could easily hear the heavy breathing of the two people and the anxious, pounding heartbeat. He then stared at a column nearby where they had hidden very carefully. Only two colleagues were now hiding behind the column, peering out in fear. When they saw Fang Hou, their hanging hearts finally relaxed. At the same time, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou with a troubled expression. "There are 4 doors, east, west, south, and north. How should we go?" As soon as he finished speaking, the two colleagues immediately stepped out from behind the column. Zhao Hao didn't know what was happening and was so scared that his soul almost left his body. Only now did the female colleague, overjoyed, burst into tears. "It's great that you two are okay." The man looked at them with a serious expression. "Fang Hao, you lead the way. We have been waiting for you here for a long time." Upon hearing this, Zhao Hao immediately rolled his eyes. "Hey, you two just ran very fast. Why do you want Fang Hao to show the way now? You two are really shameless." Seeing this, the two laughed but didn't say anything. At this moment, Fang Hao paid no attention to the two, but looked intently at the 4 doors with a calm expression. After thinking, Fang Hao responded to Zhao Hao seriously. "It's simple. Let's try each door one by one." As soon as he said that, the 3 people next to him all looked surprised at Fang Hao. Only now did the male colleague show his dissatisfaction. "We are racing against time. How can we have time to try each door?" At this point, Fang Hao didn't pay attention and went towards one of the doors. "Too much talking. If you want to go, go. If not, then don't." At the same time, Zhao Hao also followed. Seeing this, 2 colleagues behind didn't know what to do. They could only anxiously look at Fang Hao. Just then, a roar of a demon echoed everywhere, causing both of them to be frightened to their bones. Right after that, the ceiling also began to shake as before. The two didn't know what to do. They could only stare at the ceiling. The female colleague was so scared that she started to cry. "Demon, demon, it's catching up." The man looked puzzled. "How can that be? Wang Zitang and Wu Dehai are just 2 people. Why would it be so fast?" At this moment, Fang Hao suddenly thought, "It's very likely that it's because I attacked the demon or because I took its dagger, so it broke its rule of killing people in order." Seeing this, the 3 of them quickly sped up and ran towards the large door. He quickly pushed the old door out, then shouted loudly, "Run fast." Upon entering the door, they discovered that it was a staircase up to the next floor, so Fang Hao led everyone to start running up the stairs at the risk of their lives. At this moment, Fang Hao was leading, with Zhao Hao closely behind, while the other 2 colleagues are still arguing. The woman's physical condition is not as good as the others, so she panics and pulls the man in front of her, saying, "Wait for me, it's catching up." Seeing this, the man angrily looks at the woman and says, "Let go of my hand, don't pull me." At the same time, there is a loud collision behind them, and a figure flashes like lightning rushing up the stairs. Only the demon-like female doctor lying on the ceiling slowly turns, her bones creaking in a chilling manner. Its four limbs cling tightly to the ceiling, observing the people below, and at the same time, it emits a difficult sound. Give it back to me. Everyone thought it would be the same as usual. The person running last would be eaten, but this time it was beyond their expectations. It completely ignored the others and quickly chased after the stairs to the upper floor. At this moment, two colleagues were trembling with fear, looking terrified towards where Fang Hou had disappeared, and Zhao Hao followed Fang Hou and touched his thigh a few times, clearly much calmer than the others. At the same time, he noticed something unusual, and then he shouted loudly towards the stairs on the upper floor, "Fang Hou, come next to me." As soon as he finished speaking, the demon female doctor stopped beside Fang Hou, and all he saw was her angry look. Fang Hou suddenly uttered a word slowly, "Knife." After observing, the demon female doctor stuffed her mouth, looked intently at Fang Hou, and said, "Give me the knife." At the same time, it jumped down from the ceiling. At that moment, Fang Hou didn't have time to dodge and was immediately pushed down to the ground by it, its arms grabbed by the demon female doctor. Then the demon female doctor angrily growled, mouth full of blood, viciously biting into Fang Hou's neck. There was only a splattering sound, blood gushing out, and Fang Hou died once again. It also showed that the west door was not open, and after Fang Hou was resurrected, he had to go through once again what he had encountered before. However, all of his choices were no different than before. Once again, the testicles of both Wang Zai-Tang and Wu Dahai were shattered. Of course, he couldn't give up the scalpel, so as usual, as soon as he picked up the knife, the female demon doctor immediately stopped eating, angrily looking at Fang Hou. "Where is my knife?" At this time, Fang Hou raised the scalpel, looked at Zhao Hao, excitedly shouted loudly, "Run fast!" Zhao Hao panicked and ran away. This time, Fang Hou chose the north door to run, and the north was the elevator that could still be used. Fang Hou decisively ran into the elevator, pressing the floor to go up. But because the elevator was too old, the startup speed was extremely slow. Seeing that, Fang Hou used the speed of 25 continuous hand crank pressings to the elevator button. But just as the elevator door was about to close, a pale hand suddenly reached in, pushing the closing elevator door open. Immediately after, the pale hand reached out towards Fang Hou. Then came the sound of a splash and blood splattered everywhere. Fang Hou once again proved that the north door was not viable, and when he resurrected again, this time Fang Hou chose the south door. The south door was a very chaotic operating room, with medical instruments scattered everywhere. The most dangerous thing at the south door is the final end. At that moment, the female demon doctor was lying in a corner staring at him, only a step away from Fang Hou. Right after that, the female demon doctor pounced and directly threw Fang Hou to the ground. One person, one demon, four eyes staring at each other. Then blood splattered and Fang Hou died once again. Now there's only one way left, the east door. If this door still leads to a dead end, Fang Hou only has to give up the surgical knife. Thinking about this, Fang Hou felt very reluctant. Although the speed of the female demon doctor was much faster than his, he could use resurrection multiple times to predict its attack trajectory. To some extent, resurrection is equivalent to predicting the future, and Fang Hou remembered clearly that to the left of this place, there was an escape route. Thinking about that, Fang Hou took big strides towards the escape route. However, before he could run far, several dark energies appeared from behind, beginning to coil around Fang Hou's neck. Right after that, there was a sound of a switch. Fang Hou's head separated from his neck, welcoming the ninth resurrection. Standing on the edge of the cliff, Fang Hou thought that he was very close to the way out, and the next time would definitely be successful. At this time, he pointed east and firmly said, "Let's go east." This time, he did not attack Wang Zai-Tang and Wu Dahai anymore, but led Zhao Hao without hesitation to run towards the east gate. Wang Zai-Tang and Wu Dahai also ran closely behind, but shortly after running into the east gate, the familiar and chilling sound of bones once again approached. Wang Zai-Tang and Wu Dahai immediately heard the sound and were frightened, running for their lives in the hallway, afraid of becoming the last ones. However, the demon completely ignored them and jumped over their heads, rushing towards Fang Hou. At that moment, Fang Hou did not look back, just ran straight ahead, while the female demon doctor continued to chase after him from behind. Seeing this, Zhao Hao shouted loudly from behind, "Fang Hou, hurry up." But before he could finish his words, he was stunned by what he saw next, as he only saw the hand of the female demon doctor reaching behind Fang Hou, aggressively grabbing his head. Fang Hou seemed to have eyes in the back of his head, only slightly tilting his head, his pale and eerie hand almost darting past his ear. Seeing this, the female demon doctor was also amazed, her eyes wide as two bronze bells. At this moment, Fang Hou calmly looked at her, unable to help but sneer, while Zhao Hao behind him was also extremely confused. Taking advantage of the female demon doctor's astonishment, Fang Hou quickly turned and ran towards the end of the corridor. Seeing this, the female demon doctor finally became angry, baring her fangs and shouting, "Die!" She quickly closed in on Fang Hou, using her white bone claw on him. After a miss, the female demon doctor immediately unleashed a revolving spear attack, extremely fast and accompanied by a fierce whistling wind, but Fang Hou bent down, avoiding it once again. At this point, the female demon doctor's hand almost turned into a phantom, continuously attacking him, but Fang Hou always remained calm, easily avoiding the attacks. During that process, after several resurrections, Fang Hou had completely memorized the attack trajectory. In addition, after enlightening his soul, his physical body was also enhanced, so now he only needed to rely on his memory to avoid its attack trajectory. He could be safe and sound. At this moment, Zhao Hao was extremely excited, looking at Fang Hou with a reverent face. Fang Hou is really awesome. At the same time, the demon doctor's actions infuriated Fang Hou, at which point it lay on the ceiling, looking just like a giant spider-human hybrid. Suddenly, it jumped down from the ceiling, then the demon doctor roared fiercely while rushing towards Fang Hou. However, as it lunged forward, Fang Hou staggered as if something had tripped him, falling forward suddenly. Then Fang Hou fell to the ground. At the same time, the demon doctor was rushing towards him at high speed. Seeing this, Fang Hou rolled over, then gracefully slid. Fang Hou had perfectly avoided the attack, and where he had just fallen, the demon doctor struck the ground, creating a deep hole. At this moment, the female demon doctor became even more angry as she turned abruptly to look at Fang Hou, muttering continuously, "Die, die." Fang Hou slightly turned to look at her, then continued running towards the emergency exit. At the same time, Zhao Hao and the other two were stunned, feeling dizzy and unable to keep up with the speed, at which Fang Hou easily dodged several attacks. Meanwhile, the enraged female demon doctor roared and stomped her foot, once again chasing after Fang Hou. Seeing the path emitting a green light, Fang Hou exerted all of his strength to sprint towards the green light. In Zhao Hao's heart, there was both admiration and longing. This is the true spiritual master, so amazing. On the other side, Fang Hou, at the end of the last passage, also saw the emergency exit sign. This was the first time he had seen this sign after 9 resurrections. As long as this was the real way out, they would be saved. But at that moment, Fang Hou realized a problem. How to avoid the next attack? Could it be that he had to die a few more times? But at this moment, a strange scene had occurred. The female demon doctor was frantically chasing after them. When it saw the sign, it not only suddenly stopped the pursuit, but also let out a terrifying scream, then quickly retreated. Seeing this, Fang Hou was extremely suspicious, only now to look terrifying, trembling with fear. At that moment, Fang Hou frowned. Why did it suddenly stop the attack? The demon doctor's escape not only did not make him happy, but also made Fang Hou more worried. It was afraid, could there be something inside that even scared the female demon doctor? After the scream, the female demon doctor suddenly turned around at the speed of a lightning bolt, running directly in the opposite direction. At this moment, Zhao Hao and the other two also rushed over, accidentally bumping into the female demon doctor. Immediately after, a giant ball hit Zhao Hao straight in the face, instantly causing him extreme pain. Due to the demon doctor's extremely fast speed, Zhao Hao fell down staggeringly, falling backwards. His two colleagues next to him were so scared that they were at a loss. At this moment, Zhao Hao held his face, adjusted his glasses with a suspicious look. Damn it, what was that just now? Cold as ice, but incredibly soft and elastic. At the same time, two colleagues looked in the direction the female Dr. Ghost had left, looking at each other confusedly. Has she already left? On the other side, Zhao Hao hurriedly ran towards Fang Hou. Fang Hou, are you okay? Why did that female ghost suddenly run away? Fang Hou shook his head to signal that he was fine and at the same time began to analyze. According to normal logic, going out of this door should be the way out. But why did the female Dr. Ghost run away when she saw the sign? At this moment, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou with a puzzled expression. Fang Hou, what are you doing? At this moment, Fang Hou did not answer, but pondered to himself. One is suddenly running away, which can only prove that this place is likely not the way out, but a hiding place for something that even it is afraid of. At this moment, Fang Hou looked at the sign. Clearly behind the sign was a path, and the path was very dark. Completely relying on the sign for illumination, but still could vaguely see an iron door at the end of the path. Behind the iron door was just a black color, like the mouth of a giant pit full of unknown dangers. At the same time, his female colleague behind him saw the emergency exit and immediately smiled. while his male colleague saw Fang Hou standing still and anxiously asked, "Why aren't you going? Is there a problem with this path?" Hearing this, Fang Hou remained expressionless, suddenly turned around, and instead of expressing his thoughts, said, "Let's take a rest and then go." After speaking, Fang Hou sat down directly on the spot. At the same time, Zhao Hao and the others also sat down, saying taking a break is also good. Running around like this for tens of minutes, normally we can't keep running, and the female colleague deeply breathed, while the male colleague exclaimed, "I never expected to see a demon with my own eyes in this lifetime." At the same time, Fang Hou began to meditate with his eyes closed, as he wanted to wait for his soul to recover. After all, the female demon doctor had already been scared away, and he couldn't even fight back against her. So he had to wait for his soul to recover before trying again. Time flew by quickly, and after resting for half an hour, Fang Hou suddenly opened his eyes and stood up, startling the other three. He then said seriously, "Let's go." As they entered the emergency exit, it saw complete darkness. Seeing this, Fang Hou cautiously felt his way forward step by step. After walking for a while and not encountering any danger, Fang Hou started to feel uneasy. He thought to himself, a place that can make someone too scared to enter must have some danger. As they went deeper, the surroundings became even darker, and a strange atmosphere filled the air, causing Zhao Hao and the other two to look around anxiously and uneasily. At the same time, Fang Hou walked ahead, approaching the three people behind, confirming once again that there were no casualties, and then continued to move forward after a stretch of road. They suddenly saw an iron door. In addition, at the moment, nothing strange is happening. Now, Fang Hou hesitated in front of the door. I wonder if there is really any danger hidden behind this door. But there are no other options now. The worst result is to go back again. After thinking, Fang Hou slowly pushed the door open. The door made an old creaking sound, and behind the door was as dark as ink, with no light at all, a black hole. Seeing this, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou in fear. "Fang Hou, is there really a way inside this? Is there any danger?" Hearing this, Fang Hou said seriously, "If there is danger, we still have to go in." After speaking, he directly stepped into the door, the darkness like a giant abyss, slowly swallowing his figure. Here, it was so dark that nothing could be seen. The strangest thing is that it was so quiet to the point of deathly silence. Not even the sound of oneself could be heard, no footsteps, no breathing, no calling, to the point that Fang Hou still didn't know if the other three had followed. Seeing this, he tried to open his mouth, no matter how much his vocal cords vibrated, but basically no sound was made, so he tried to turn his head back, but the door behind had long disappeared. He thought he was dazzled from fatigue, so he rubbed his eyes, but the result was the same, only darkness all around. At this point, Fang Hou realized that the darkness had swallowed up the path ahead, but at this point, there was no other way. Fang Hou could only choose to continue moving forward. At this point, he can only keep moving forward until he reached the destination to find the answer. As Fang Hou continued down the path ahead, it was still pitch black all around. He didn't even know how long he had been walking. It seemed like not only had the darkness swallowed up the path ahead, but also the sense of time. Furthermore, this road seems to never have an end. The loneliness of the darkness is so overwhelming that it could drive a normal person mad, but it doesn't affect Fang Hou, because his heart is even darker than this road. However, just when Fang Hou thought he would be trapped and die in this darkness, a ray of light suddenly appeared in front of him, and then the light slowly expanded, while the darkness retreated frantically. The surroundings returned to normal, and Fang Hou was stunned as he looked at the familiar Bai Liu Academy in front of him with an unbelieving and astonished expression. "I'm outside now." At this moment, the surroundings returned to normal, and people suddenly appeared on the road surrounded by beautiful green trees, which was the avenue leading to Bai Liu Academy. Seeing this, Zhao Hao couldn't help but excitedly shout, "Fang Hou, great! We have escaped from the Demon Gate." But after a while, still no reply from Fang Hou, so Zhao Hao looked around to find Fang Hou. At the same time, the female colleague looked around, her face incredulous. Did we really go outside like this? While the male colleague looked tense. Let's quickly leave this eerie place. Soon after, Zhao Hao saw Fang Hou not far away, so he fearfully suggested to Fang Hou, or should we quickly leave here too? What if the strange things inside come out? At this moment, Fang Hou did not reply, but stared at Bai Liu Academy. Frowning gradually, "No, this is not right." At this moment, Fang Hou suddenly woke up. Qingshan Psychiatric Hospital has disappeared. Earlier we didn't see it because we entered inside, but now we are outside. We should see the psychiatric hospital now. But now, you couldn't see it. Only Bai Liu Academy remained. At this moment, Fang Hou was immersed in thought, feeling uneasy. Why is there only Bai Liu Academy left? Why haven't we encountered any danger? And why are we able to easily leave the Demon Valley like this? At this moment, Fang Hou couldn't understand his thoughts 100 times. The female doctor was clearly so scared just by looking at the directional signs towards the sea, but we haven't encountered any danger. Could it be that the female doctor has some limitations that prevent her from leaving the psychiatric hospital, so when she saw the way out, she just ran away? Right at this moment, Zhao Hao came up to Fang Hou and urged him, "Let's go home and rest. Dealing with this today has exhausted me. I won't have the energy to work tomorrow if we don't." Hearing this, Fang Hou snapped out of his thoughts and looked at Zhao Hao, saying, "Let's go home, then back to work." Zhao Hao turned back with a serious expression and said, "That's right. Let's go home tonight and back to work tomorrow." At this moment, Fang Hou discovered something else that left him extremely shocked. All the strange things that used to fill the streets, even the indescribable things that appeared in the sky, had all disappeared without a trace. He looked around, unable to help but step back, muttering to himself, "What on earth is happening?" In this moment of confusion, Fang Hou suddenly ran back towards home, muttering like a madman, "Nothing left. It can't be. It can't be." Seeing this, Zhao Hao stood there with a puzzled expression, asking Fang Hou, "What do you mean by nothing left? What are you looking for?" Fang Hou could accept the inexplicable and miraculous escape. He could even accept the disappearance of the psychiatric hospital, but the only thing he couldn't accept was the disappearance of the strange things. He ran a long way and finally reached the street, then stood in the middle, blocking the traffic. Zhao Hao, standing behind him, shouted frantically, "Fang Hou, what are you doing? Come back. It's very dangerous." But at this moment, Fang Hou basically didn't pay attention, still blocking the car in the middle of the road, because at this moment, Fang Hou just wanted to quickly go home. The disappearance of strange things made him at a loss. "If they disappear, there can be no revenge, especially my gentle wife. You can only die in my hands, my dear wife. You must wait for me at home." Then Fang Hou ran out onto the street, stopped a taxi, urging the driver to go straight to the boarding house. Inside the car, Fang Hou kept muttering, while the driver looked at the rearview mirror with a puzzled look. Is this person heartbroken? Only seeing Fang Hou shaking all over, muttering incessantly, "You can't disappear, at least my wife definitely can't disappear." At this point, Fang Hou showed a panic never seen before, with red eyes muttering, "My wife, you can't go. You must not go." Not long after, the taxi stopped at the gate of Fang Hou's neighborhood. Seeing this, Fang Hou quickly jumped out like a madman, running towards his lodging. At this moment, the driver shouted loudly, "Hey, don't run. You haven't paid yet." But Fang Hou's speed was incredibly fast, and he had disappeared into the night, leaving the driver too scared to go after him for the money. Not to mention, Fang Hou seemed to have the speed of a flying person, and just the strange behavior in the car had already made the driver feel afraid. At the same time, Fang Hou ran frantically up the stairs, similar to the outside world, not seeing anything peculiar in this neighborhood, which only made his mind even more disturbed. With a loud bang, Fang Hou pushed hard on the door and stormed in, only seeing Fang Hou covered in sweat and breathing heavily. But he had no intention of immediately stopping his frantic search for his wife's whereabouts. In his heart, the whole world could disappear, but not his wife. He only saw an empty living room as he ran around the house shouting loudly, "Honey, come out, I see you." But no matter how he called or searched every corner of the house, he still couldn't find his beautiful and gentle wife. Seeing this, Fang Hou collapsed and sat on the ground. At this moment, his spirit completely collapsed. Fang Hou muttered to himself, "You've killed me 18 times. Without you, how can I live the rest of my life? Honey, you can't disappear." After a while, Fang Hou slowly got up and then walked dazedly towards the bedroom. "I have died dozens of times, pushed to the brink of despair by my wife and the female doctor. It was only my deep hatred for them that helped me survive." He desperately walked into the room and lay down. His blurred eyes stared at the ceiling. "I swear I will avenge all the strange things so that they have to experience my pain, but now the strange things have disappeared. I know where to put all of my deep hatred. What is the meaning of life?" He continued to stare at the ceiling all night, until the next morning when Zhao Hao's phone rang. Seeing this, Fang Hou answered the phone in a daze, only to hear Zhao Hao, extremely worried, say, "Fang Hou, quickly check the news. The Bailiu Academy was on fire at 7:49 last night." Upon hearing the 4 words Bailiu Academy, Fang Hao's eyes lit up with a glimmer of hope, and he immediately got up to check the news. The news reported that last night at 1940, a serious fire broke out at the sales office of Bailiu Academy in the development area of Lukdang City. The fire was finally extinguished by 22 o'clock. According to statistics, the accident resulted in 11 fatalities. After identifying the victims, the list of the deceased is as follows: Wang Zitang, Wu Dahai, Fang Hou, Zhao Hao, Lai Fei Fei. Upon hearing this, Fang Hou suddenly burst into a crazy and excited laughter, Excellent. I have the ability to come back to life after death. How wonderful. Fang Hou, upon hearing the news of his death, was truly excited and thrilled. This also means that the bizarre event is not over yet. I know they are just playing hide and seek with me. Even this non-bizarre event is probably an illusion created by the bizarre thing. Thinking about this, he sincerely smiled slyly. Darling, I might be able to see you again. At this moment, when Fang Hou was falling into a crazed state, suddenly there was a notification of a text message. He opened the phone to see that it was from the sales office work group, and the manager Wu Dahai was reminding Fang Hou, "Why haven't you gone to work yet?" Then there was a series of consecutive texts, all repeating the same question. Seeing this, Fang Hou not only did not panic, but also excitedly laughed and held his head. Wu Dahai is dead and still so interesting, really too interesting. He's already dead, but still calls me to work. It seems that after death, he has become a demonic capitalist. Because Fang Hou did not reply for a long time, the reminders on the phone became more frequent. Suddenly, Fang Hao's laughter abruptly stopped. He stared at the phone screen, seeing a line of bloody text suddenly appear, emitting a strange and bloody aura. "You thought if you didn't speak, I wouldn't know where you are." Then the blood began to slowly change, then converge, boiling like water boiling, gradually turning into an eye, and in the next moment, it carried countless blood grays coming out of the phone screen. At the same time, the gloomy voice of Wu Dahai rang out, "Fang Hou, I see you now." Only a strange eye staring intently at Fang Hou. "Fang Hou, come to the company immediately and work." At this point, the scene was extremely strange, enough to drive a normal person insane. But Fang Hou was an exception. He immediately reached out and grasped the strange eye, then calmly said, "Okay, but it's really inconvenient. I only have one phone. Please don't take over it." At the same time, he also felt like he was weeding. Using force to pull it out of the phone, immediately his eye made a painful sound. Next, Fang Hou used force to squeeze, and his eye immediately disappeared like a soap bubble in front of his eyes. At this point, Fang Hou opened his palm, but found it empty. No eyeball, no blood. Is this an illusion? The more interesting this gets. Let's see what he wants to do. So Fang Hou rode his mountain bike and quickly arrived at the Bai Liu Academy. This time at Bai Liu Academy, he was shocked to find the entire sales office burned black, surrounded by caution tape. Seeing this, he directly stepped over the caution tape and went towards the sales office. As he got closer to Bai Liu Academy, Fang Hou looked around and even smelled the charred smell. The effect was really authentic. When he walked through the door, he immediately saw Li Fai Fi in the crowd, their clothes tattered. At the same time, Li Fai Fi also noticed Fang Hou, then ran towards him with a bright smile, saying, "Fang Hou is here. You're early today." At this point, Fang Hou did not respond, but reached out and touched Li Fai Fi's chest. Feeling warm and firm, "Is this real?" Seeing this, Li Fai Fi immediately blushed and said, "Fang Hou, you're despicable." Suddenly, Fang Hou pushed her away and smiled meaningfully, of course. Then he went straight to the second floor, but after a few steps, he noticed Zhao Hao hurrying towards him, looking shocked, and said, "Fang Hou, were you also caught to work?" Fang Hou shook his head with a serious face. "I wasn't caught. I like going to work. Where's Wu Dahai?" Hearing this, Zhao Hao was extremely surprised, but also didn't think much and pointed to the office. "He's in there." Fang Hou glanced over and noticed that his colleagues who had died before were now in their usual work positions, some working, some lazy, just like before. Fang Hou looked at them in amazement, thinking in his memory, "Those who have died still live well. What is the truth after all?" Fang Hou had arrived at Wu Dahai's office, but as soon as he stepped in, Wu Dahai pointed at Fang Hou and immediately started scolding him. "Fang Hou, why are you just now coming to work? I mentioned you in the group. Why didn't you respond, do you know?" Before he could finish, Fang Hou, with an expressionless face, calmly interrupted Wu Dahai. "When will my commission be paid?" Wu Dahai immediately snorted coldly, slamming his hand down on the table. "You have the nerve to come here and demand your commission from me with your attitude towards work like yours." Seeing this, Fang Hou once again interrupted his shouting. "Even when you're dead, you're still despicable like this." As soon as he heard that, Wu Dahai immediately flew into a rage, pointing at Fang Hou's nose and spitting out saliva. "What did you say? Who's dead? Do you even know how to speak human language? I'm still alive and well. It's you. Who's the dead one?" His voice echoed throughout the working area, and all of his colleagues looked over with eager eyes. In that moment, a streak of silver light flashed by, and the whole world fell silent in the blink of an eye. All that was seen was a shining knife blade gliding across Wu Dahai's thick, stiff neck, held tightly by a big hand which belonged to Fang Hou. Then, a splurt was heard as Fang Hou forcefully pulled out the knife, blood instantly splattering as if slaughtering a pig. At the same time, the hefty body of Wu Dehai crashed to the ground with a thud. Fang Hou then calmly and sinisterly smiled, saying, "Now you're dead." At that moment, the colleagues in the work area seemed frozen, each person standing like a lifeless statue, motionless and silent. His face turned pale like a dead person. Even Zhao Hao seemed the same. Seeing this, Fang Hou patted Zhao Hao's shoulder to try to wake him up, but no matter how Fang Hou called him, there was no reaction. In the next moment, Zhao Hao's eyes suddenly bulged and burst, that all the muscles on his body flowed out like sewage swelling up. The others also started to twist strangely, their necks and spines bending into a bizarre shape. Seeing this, Fang Hou muttered, "Is this a transformation? Then I will break your spells." As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou launched a full attack, bolstered by spiritual energy. His body became agile, like a panther wielding a knife towards the people who were transforming. At this moment, a dazzling light flashed in the air as Fang Hou swiftly rushed towards the transforming people with his knife, cutting at incredibly fast speed. In just a fleeting second, he walked around the working area, only to see everyone dead in different ways, some with their throats cut, others with their stomachs stabbed. When Fang Hou stopped, he had reached the other end of the working area, and behind him, the sound of corpses falling to the ground echoed incessantly. Then Fang Hou looked around and coldly said, "Have you had enough fun? Come out." As soon as he finished speaking, the corpses on the ground seemed to sink into the mud with a muffled sound, slowly disappearing from view. At the same time, the entire sales office shattered like glass. Seeing this, Fang Hou remained calm, standing still. Indeed, it was all just a dream created by the monsters. At this moment, Fang Hou covered his face, expressionless, and said, "It's just a dream. It seems. This is your ability." Immediately after, a black smoke floated over, slowly condensing into an eye, and a strange, hoarse voice said, "How do you see through the dream?" Fang Hou remained calm, but it's not to say that you understand people very well, so if your dreams are very realistic, it's just a pity that you don't understand silicon. Fai Fei's hand in the dream feels too soft. Hearing this, the demon's eyes looked suspicious, feeling the star's hand. "Why aren't you afraid?" As soon as he finished speaking, Fang Hou smiled and looked at him closely. "It seems that you rely on fear to kill people. No wonder there are lists of dead people coming back to call me to work. It's really scary to work even after you've died." Fang Hou slowly walked towards the demon's eyes as he spoke, then looked at him coldly. "But I also have to thank you, because of your deliberate creation of all kinds of strange events to threaten me. I have a more intense desire to live. Thanks to that, I realized the illusion and escape." At this point, the black smoke did not say anything, but just stared at Fang Hou as if wanting to remember his appearance. The next moment, it slowly drifted away, murmuring, "Humans don't know fear. I will remember you." It was then that Fang Hou finally understood that the monster itself could control this dream and had threatened the female doctor. If he guessed correctly, the female doctor who was infected after the surgery was probably the weakest person in this psychiatric hospital. The demon eye from earlier was probably created by an experiment, one of the monsters that escaped from the hospital room with different abilities from the female doctor. At the same time, Zhao Hao was using both hands to clutch his neck, his veins bulging and his pupils dilated. Fang Hou approached, checked Zhao Hao's breath, and confirmed that he was dead, having strangled himself. At this moment, Fang Hou remembered the scene in the storage room, where Zhao Hao had sobbed bitterly, saying he would not abandon them. Thinking of this, Fang Hou took out a scalpel and stabbed himself in the neck. His consciousness began to blur. Then he woke up at the emergency exit where his two colleagues were overjoyed. "This is the emergency exit. The way to survive must be here." However, after experiencing it once, this time Fang Hou did not choose to rest to recover his spiritual strength. Because the monster had the ability to control dreams, the best way was not to sleep. Fang Hou calmly said, "Let's go." Then he pushed the door and left. The other two immediately followed, but this time as before, they ended up at the Bai Liu Academy. It was still the tree-lined path leading to the academy. Fang Hou looked around and saw nothing. A world without monsters was just a dream. Seeing this, Fang Hou decisively drew his knife and stabbed himself in the neck. After Fang Hou tried several times, but still fell into a dream, he finally understood that no matter what, he could not avoid falling into a dream. To overcome this hurdle, he could only rely on Zhao Hao to conquer his fear. Right after that, he turned to look at everyone. There was still another monster in the escape route. It would create all kinds of strange events of the illusion, even making people think they had escaped the monster, but it was all fake. Hearing this, everyone was horrified. What? There's still a monster here. At the same time, Fang Hou put his arm around Zhao Hao, looking at him intently. "You must remember, as long as you can overcome your fear, then you can live. And also, if you see Li Fai Fi in the illusion, You can touch her chest. The fake and the real feeling are different. That is the flaw of the illusion. Hearing this, Zhao Hao was shocked, his face turning red to the ears, but I have never touched anything real before. Just now, Fang Hou had experienced several similar dreams. Although he could quickly escape, no matter how he reminded Zhao Hao and others, they could not control their fear. Only saw people lying on the ground, gripping their necks tightly. In the process of experimenting many times like that, Fang Hou found that the dreams were entirely created by the monster, so each person's dream would be different. In other words, only each person themselves could break their own dreams. At the same time, Zhao Hao was using his strength to strangle himself, his face turning green and looking as if he was about to suffocate. Seeing this, Fang Hou quickly reached out to pry his hands off. This allowed Zhao Hao to breathe smoothly, but his condition was still not stable. Immediately after, he pushed Zhao Hao and shouted loudly, but it was all in vain, having no effect at all. At this point, Fang Hou slapped Zhao Hao's face hard, trying to wake him up. Fang Hou slapped him a dozen times, both sides of Zhao Hao's face turning red, but he still did not wake up. Seeing this, Fang Hou had to kick him hard in the lower body. The pain caused Zhao Hao to immediately hug his lower body, shaking all over, but it was still in vain. He still did not wake up. Fang Hou was in agony, scratching his head, unable to hit or kick Zhao Hao. With no other choice, Fang Hou had to pull out a knife, wanting to see if stabbing would work. Therefore, he decisively stabbed Zhao Hao in the leg, even using a bit of psychic power. Immediately, Zhao Hao's expression became more painful, his mouth constantly emitting painful cries, but he still couldn't wake up. After a while, Zhao Hao suddenly tilted his head, dying right in front of Fang Hou. At this moment, he looked at Zhao Hao, who had died, with a sad face. How can I save you? Is there really no way? After some thought, Fang Hou decided to try one last time. If it still didn't work, he would have to give up. He used a knife to cut a line on his own neck. Fang Hou died once again. After being resurrected, he sunk into contemplation. How can I help Zhao Hao overcome his fear? At the same time, Zhao Hao looked at Fang Hou happily. Fang Hou, let me tell you a secret. Last night, I dreamt of being oppressed by a demon. Moreover, it was a very beautiful white-dressed female demon, so gentle on my body head. Thinking of this, Zhao Hao sighed, but just when I was about to kiss her, I woke up. It's a pity. At this moment, a colleague pointed to a sign ahead. This is the emergency exit. Meanwhile, Zhao Hao excitedly shouted from behind, when we get outside, I will definitely find a woman to touch. Hearing this, Fang Hou immediately snapped out of it. He came up with a plan, which was to divert attention. He immediately turned to look at Zhao Hao. Although he was introverted and shy, his biggest characteristic was the desire for sex. Since he couldn't overcome his fear, then use another intense primal emotion to avoid it. This made Fang Hou feel that he had made a breakthrough. Eating and sex are also a kind of instinct. After some thought, Fang Hou looked at Zhao Hao seriously. Now you open your phone and turn the volume to the maximum. Hearing this, Zhao Hao looked confused. What for? At this point, Fang Hou smiled rarely. Don't ask, just turn the volume to the maximum and play your favorite movie out loud. As soon as Fang Hou spoke, Zhao Hao began to doubt his own ears and his face turned red. But seeing Fang Hou speaking so seriously, under pressure, he had to take out his favorite movie, only to see a seductive woman in a teacher's uniform, holding a ruler, with charming eyes and rosy cheeks. Student Zhao Hao, if you make a mistake in your homework, you have to immediately accept the punishment. Hearing this, Zhao Hao immediately blushed and said, Fang Hou, don't joke around anymore. If you want to watch, wait until we're outside. Playing the sound out loud here is like going to the bathroom in the middle of the street. As soon as Zhao Hao finished speaking, Fang Hou sternly shouted, I'm not joking with you. I'm saving your life. Now, immediately open the movie. Seeing this, Zhao Hao had to take out his phone and reluctantly open his favorite movie. As soon as Zhao Hao opened the movie, the atmosphere of fear in the dark hallway seemed to dissipate somewhat. Everyone's attention was focused on the phone screen, only seeing a pair of cherry lips sticking out, incredibly alluring. Immediately after that, the teacher in uniform suddenly looked serious, holding a ruler and scolded, lie down. If you make a mistake in the exercise, you have to be punished. At the same time, Fang Hou pointed at the phone with a serious look. You have to watch carefully for me and fully immerse yourself in the student character in the movie. Make yourself excited. When entering a virtual reality, no matter what happens, don't care. Just close your eyes, imagine the next scene. Only then can you overcome your fear. He turned to his two colleagues next to him, both of you too. As soon as Fang Hou finished speaking, Zhao Hao stared at the phone with concentration, and at the same time, a satisfied smile appeared on his face. Gradually, he began to immerse himself. Seeing this, his two colleagues looked at him with strange eyes. The male colleague expressed confusion. In this situation, you still have the mood to watch a movie. The female colleague blushed at the sound of the voice in a movie, while Zhao Hao now had a very embarrassed expression. But he didn't pay attention. He knew Fang Hou wouldn't harm him. In the scene, the teacher is seen using a ruler to hit the student and saying, "Does it hurt? Do you know where you went wrong?" It is clear that the two colleagues did not have the same sexual desire as Zhao Hao, so there were no movies to watch on the phone. They had to follow Zhao Hao to watch together. At this point, everyone gathered around the phone, eagerly watching and waiting for a while. Zhao Hao watched until his blood was boiling, reaching a peak like a volcano erupting, unable to control himself. Furthermore, he was completely immersed in the movie, imagining himself as a student in the film, and the teacher sitting on his lap with her arm around him. At this point, Fang Hou looked at Zhao Hao, seeing that he was completely immersed, and calmly said, "All right, it's almost over. Let's go." However, Fang Hou also added a few more instructions. Remember, no matter what strange events you see, they are all fake. Find the flaws in the dream and don't be afraid, or you will not die. After speaking, he walked ahead, leading the way towards the emergency exit. At this point, he couldn't help but feel bored, having had the same dream many times. Fang Hou even missed his wife, wanting to quickly go home to see her. After they entered the emergency exit, the dream quickly came back. The other two colleagues, on the other hand, looked just as terrifying and miserable as before, as if they had gone through some terrible ordeal, falling to the ground and losing their lives. Seeing this, Fang Hou was not surprised, as fear is something that is difficult for anyone to overcome, only hoping that this time Zhao Hao could escape the dream. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Hao next to him ripped open his clothes to reveal his chest, his face blushing, murmuring incessantly, "What a hot girl." This action left Fang Hou stunned, as Zhao Hao then wildly shook his head, stuck out his tongue, and kept licking. Seeing this, Fang Hou was unable to help feeling bored. It seemed that he felt pity for the handsome ghost, truly a modern-day weirdo. Suddenly, Fang Hao's eyes widened in disbelief, staring at Zhao Hao as he discovered an extraordinary aura emanating from him. At this moment, Zhao Hao also showed signs of soul fluctuation, and at the same time, he was shaking his lower body rhythmically and quickly in his dream. Fang Hou was both scared and secretly glad at this moment, as he realized that Zhao Hao had awakened his soul. Suddenly, Zhao Hao opened his eyes with clear traces of bloodshot eyes. Immediately after, Zhao Hao stood up from the ground, his face still filled with regret. "Fei Fei, don't run, damn it. Let's do it again." But when he looked around and saw the surroundings, he was immediately dumbfounded. How did he end up in the emergency exit? At this moment, he gazed at Fang Hou in astonishment. "Fang Hou, have we succeeded?" But before he could finish his sentence, he seemed to think of something and looked at Fang Hou from top to bottom with vigilance. Indeed, he showed no emotion, very similar to the Fang Hou I knew. Suddenly, he remembered Fang Hao's earlier words, so he immediately put on a fierce look and continuously demonstrated his Dragon Claw hand martial arts technique. "Are you Fang Hou? Come here and let me squeeze you." Seeing Zhao Hao's reaction, Fang Hou couldn't help but feel pleased and pushed Zhao Hao's hand away. "Oh, not bad. You started to think, even though it's not much." To prove that this was not a dream, Fang Hou closed his eyes and sighed in a helpless manner, imitating the revenge of the water pipe mechanic, the busty female patient, and the flight attendant's costume, as well as Ultraman. As soon as Zhao Hao heard these words, his face immediately turned red and he rushed towards Fang Hou to stop him. "Don't say any more. Do you dare to steal my phone?" Fang Hou quickly dodged to one side. At this moment, Zhao Hao could not stop, staggering and falling to the ground, falling squarely on the two colleagues who had died at the same time earlier. Seeing this, Zhao Hao couldn't help but shudder, so scared that he couldn't speak, dazed, staring at the dead colleagues without blinking. Then he looked at the other two in horror. "Damn it, Fang Hou, they..." Fang Hou calmly said, "They didn't make it? Okay, we're ready to leave here." This time, the two of them stood in front of the large door. Before that, what they called their door was actually a strange dream created by the demon. Only when Fang Hou put his hand on the door, he suddenly felt something strange. This time, the demon did not appear anymore, but now Fang Hou didn't think much but pushed the door open with force. As soon as the door opened, light poured in. This dazzling light and the dark hallway created a stark contrast. When the two walked in, they quickly appeared on the street. Seeing this, Zhao Hao looked around, his face in disbelief. Soon after, he was overjoyed to have escaped the disaster. "Fang Hou, we're outside now," he said. Hearing this, Fang Hou looked up at the sky. A strange scene, impossible to describe in words, appeared before his eyes once again. He asked, "Is this really outside this time?" Then he said apathetically, "Do you have any spiritual enlightenment?" Immediately, Zhao Hao was stunned, his eyes wide open like two big bells. "Spiritual enlightenment," he said. Suddenly, Zhao Hao thought that in the virtual scene just now, he had a strange feeling, as if not only apathetic, but also his strength had increased. Fang Hou suspected and looked at him. So, have you awakened any abilities? As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Hao laughed loudly, feeling for a moment and then burst into tears. It seems like I can't feel any abilities, but Wang Zai Tang had said, everyone who has enlightenment has abilities. Am I the only one who is incapable? At this point, Zhao Hao no longer looked as happy as before, directly lowered his head and said, so what is Fang Hou's ability? Hearing this, Fang Hou solemnly said, my ability is predicting the future. Upon hearing this, Zhao Hao's shocked face looked dazed. What do you mean predicting the future? How come in the demon realm? Every time you know which way to go, you even know which way has demons in the escape route. Fang Hou remained calm and nodded, then looked up at the ceiling in contemplation. If there really is a spiritual master organization in the world, then compared to the ability to escape pain, predicting the future is more beneficial for enhancing one's own value, thus being able to receive more resources from the organization. Because Fang Hou wanted to quickly become strong and then proceed to seek revenge on the demons, especially on my beloved wife, suddenly Fang Hou realized that he could not see the psychiatric hospital. In his perception, King Shan's psychiatric hospital was attached to the side of the shopping mall, but now why can't he see it at all? Could it be that the demons have integrated into reality?